Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going? It's Dave Dobbs here. It's Monday, the 15th of April. It's like 7:15, and I still haven't addressed the comments on the last few videos. I've been very distracted with a lot of other stuff. I've had friends over. I've been dealing with a lot of other kind of like family issues and stuff like that. Sometimes it's the whole emotional kind of like space that it takes me to that, and I've been trying to feel kind of my own space, my own energy on this idea of running the European elections and trying to bring this message that I've got coming through into this kind of arena, into this kind of like, I see too much that we stand on the outside shouting at the politicians within, and sometimes we should engage more and get more involved rather than the corporations that just buy their way into our democracy and guise themselves as people in this big democratic process, which is getting sort of like, which has been completely taken over, as far as I can see, by the kind of like this corporate control. Really, so we're all watching this thing going on in various different forms. And is Europe the big baddie in all this? As I've always said, I think NATO is far worse, and I think having an alliance and allowing that alliance to fall apart right now is a terrifying thing for Europe at the moment, and it has far-reaching implications of what that could mean. But where we are right now, we're starting to hear a little bit of activity on Kilauea, on the Big Island in Hawaii. I think we've just had let's just do a quick share and just have a little look at some of the things I've just put up on. Well, let's just go first of all to QuickTime Player and share that, and just remember where we are. So that's the 21st of May. What did we say with the 15th of April? So let's just bring that out of the way, two shakes, and just bring that back to round about that sort of like where we are now. So we can see, in my opinion, we've got this thing coming in here, this twin tail object, big Nibiru, whatever you want to call it. It's coming in here and it's going to overtake us at some point. And we're not exactly too sure what the kind of perihelion point, the closest point this will be to Earth during this kind of like this passage here, but we can expect to be quite close to it. And it could also be that it's cut more across on the inside down here or above us, so to speak, along this sort of line here. It's very, very difficult to say where it's gone at this stage, which side of the Earth it is at this stage. And of course, whether it's going to be, last year, if we go back to just remember last year, we saw Kilauea just going off at, it started around about the 4th of May. And, we had the big sighting over India on the way. We had the tsunami in Indonesia. We had two tsunamis in Indonesia at this one point here, and one point around about just here. And then, of course, we've had the big sightings, not Kilauea, I keep saying Kilauea, apologies, Krakatoa blew its top as well during this time. So we know we get massive volcanic activity. And obviously I'm of the mind that this is the big cause of all the carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere at the moment and in directions. And the result of the oceans heating up massively at the moment, far greater than the atmospheric, the air temperature. The residual air temperature is just hasn't risen more than a degree in a century, and yet oceanic temperatures are rising. Well, various places, but they're going up masses. Some reports say it's about 13 degrees, other reports say it's about 9 degrees. There seems to be, but it's big. It's really, really, really big in a very short space. And you've got to put all this data together and think, well, what is it? When you see you know, like that, this shot from the Relentless Maverick. And we're going to come to this comment section because we're going to go through and review some of the comments of my last videos together, I think, and just trying to sort of get a feeling of whether or not I should do this thing and try and get involved in the EU elections and bring the spotlight of my channel into that and try and open that process and try and express my feelings about that in that whole process. But that's incredible, isn't it? It's just absolutely, you know, Roger Paul shot there. And what was that other one we looked at? I mean, that is also Jim Sar, I think it was. And it's just, yeah, it's just. So we are expecting that kind of this. We're coming into this close passage here. It first started, like I say, it started on the round about the. If we experienced the closest kind of like gravitational effects of it from the 4th of May till the end of the mid June last year, then we can drop everything back a month, except that how close are we going to be to the orbital track of this thing from the 4th of April up to the kind of like the middle of May to June. You know, it's all very, very difficult to like calculate now. We're just kind of watching it. We can just make various guesses. You know, the other thing we've got to think about, this thing could move further down through the ecliptic. But so let's just come out of that share. You know, the whole system could have been moved further down, so it could be much further away. It could be a little bit further away from us overall when it goes underneath us. There's a lot of unknowns in this, but we are definitely coming into a big vicinity of this right now. So let's just stop that share, and yeah, sorry about that. I just had to go off and do a mission of vital importance, which was get a cup of tea. So it's going to be a bit of a crazy show today, and you might want to sort of think about coming and going for it, because we're going to look at the comments and try and decide. But I just thought before we do anything else, let's just go back over to that share and just look at what happened on Kilauea as what will it be? It will be on my I suppose it will be on Safari there. What did we see about Hawaii? Is that anything to do with Hawaii? Well, this was a very large thing, because this was just going to play this little bit of Dutch synths speaking here. It was this was done on the 12th of April.
Because that's a joke, but this is not a joke that this size earthquake can cause major damage. So most likely there's been some major damage in Indonesia from this 7.0 earthquake that we were looking for. This is the second 7.0 earthquake to strike this week. There was one down here, which they also downgraded to 6.5, and there was one up here in Alaska, which they also downgraded to 6.5. So 6.5, 7.0 here, 6.5, 7.0 here, and 6.5, 7.0 here in the past few days. And whether they do a downgraded on it or not, all three are 6.5. The exact same size earthquake on all three sides of the state, north, west, and east. That's something we have to watch on as well.
There you go. So we've got to keep a watch on there. You know, there's big seismic activity, lots of volcanoes going off, lots of activity. What do we see in Kilauea? You know, Dutch synths. I mean, I just love his process of analysing the kind of the way in which energy moves around the globe as a result of having an earthquake. And you know, I don't know whether he's very much of a mind that he's very much. I mean, new activity on Kilauea volcano in Hawaii, 2000 April, and that's April 6th. He's very much of mind that it's fracking that's causing most of the problems. This was Hawaii, M5.3 Quake seismic audio. I don't know if I've managed to record this, but it's very just interesting. It's like I don't know how much time it is compressed into like about 30 seconds, but it's kind of like, I guess it's, they do actually say, but it's quite a lot of time. It's probably, I have no idea how much the whole activity is, but
my website is, of course, in the description box below, right under my email address. The audio you're about to hear is of the DLP-HF event shown right here, which occurred about 6 hours or so after the magnitude 5.3, and it is 1 hour and 10 minutes of seismic data compressed into 42 seconds.
get what I'm talking about here. And, you know, we're seeing something big happening in the Pacific Basin at the moment. A lot of volcanoes kind of like becoming active. Could Kilauea be coming back online? Well, we've got to face the reality that this is, if my timeline isn't even near right, then.
So that was of the DLP-HF event. Very interesting, huh?
So, you know, there's evidence of there is evidence of Hawaii earthquake. You know, is it awakening again? Basically, you know, there's lots of kind of stories on it at the moment coming in. Why did I stop on that video, I wonder? I mean, because, you know, we have to kind of like was this one of the videos that I was going to so I stopped here on, because obviously we had this, you know, third phase of the moon brought this up, didn't they, on the April the 8th. What is that? That's exactly like Becky Lewis's, the same sort of shape as Becky Lewis's thing. It's exactly, you can imagine if sort of like on my model again, if you kind of like if we sorry, I'm going to the wrong. Whoops, sorry about this. I need to stop share. There we go. If we go back to Safari here. Oh, sorry, not Safari. If we go back to learn how to use your maybe I did get that right. Sorry about that. I did get that right. I'm not talking about Safari. I'm talking about the QuickTime player here. We saw all these asteroids. You know, at this point here, where now the American government have released the information that there was indeed massive asteroid exploded. I think it was over the Baltic Sea late December. I mean, I think it's around about the 18th. You know, the explosion in the atmosphere was supposed to be 10 times bigger than the Hiroshima bomb. I mean, if we're seeing all this evidence and we can start piecing this together, and we can start understanding that this is, as I've demonstrated in all my videos, a very predictable pathway. We can bring all of this together from, you know, with Carlos Ferrada's great prediction in sort of like when was it? It was with Carlos Ferrada's great prediction in 1680 there. Yeah, especially Hitler had seen Planet X as well. There's all these people sort of reporting how Hitler would have seen it, and yeah, that was the kind of like the time. You know, if we can start really piecing together this whole pathway and realize that this big body actually orbits the sun every 169 years, not 3,600 years or anything like that. it's been a regular occurrence. It's always been part of our system. And we can start seeing this big view of the kind of of the story that we're in, the big story that we're really in. You know, for us, we can realize that the institutions try and throw us under the wheels of our own gods, literally. That's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to throw us under the wheels of our own gods, and that's why I've kind of taken this odd path of kind of like, you know, I've come through this whole thing by understanding the whole thing with Europe, and then through that I've understood so many other things, that realizing that, you know, for me to publish a book in 2011, Laughing Gas, to say that, you know, really to talk about the woes of leaving Europe, what happens if we do leave Europe, all the terrible things I saw happening in visions when I was before that time, before writing that, to try and bring that together, to try and make people understand what would happen, why would there be a necessity to break up the European alliance, what would occur then to the union of all those different countries, what would they be fed into there in their vulnerable state, why is the alliance such a massive threat to other institutions that want to control economic hegemony on this plane. You know, there's a lot of things, and to try and make all this effort to try and do this, I've been left in this conundrum of do I run in this election, and do I bring the kind of this message into this kind of arena, because that's what I've been attempting to do with my things. So I just wanted to let's go over to my channel. Let's do this together a little bit, because I'm terrified when I go to the comments. They really destabilize me sometimes. So I thought, let's do it together. Let's have a little bit of a kind of like go through the comments and of some of the last two videos, and try and get a feeling of whether there is any kind of any support to run for me, because I've got to raise £5,000 to run in the European elections. It's almost unfair that there is that amount of money, and it is that unfair that you have to pay that much money to run in this process, because it's out of the budget of what I could afford. But if I could raise it, then I'm going to try, and if I get in, and that means engaging. And so I'm in the last kind of like 10-day kind of like threshold of getting the paperwork in. But you don't have to get nominees to run in the European election. So it's just getting the money together. I've got to do something today or tomorrow, I think tomorrow, and just check up on what other things I might have to have as I get paid. I think it's by the 16th, there's a certain few things that have got to be done as well. So I've got a few bits and pieces to sort out, and I'll give you a progress report. So I thought, let's go now to, let's go to my channel. Let's go over and look at the last couple of videos and look at the comments together, and sort of like, and communicate back, because often you send me lots and lots of information. Let's go to videos, make it a bit easier. Do I run in the EU elections? So let's go to this one first of all. Yeah, that's the one I was on, wasn't it? Apologies. That's why I was on this one. Let's pause this and let's see what the fear, because this is where I was putting the ideas on. So there's 139 comments, and so it's going to take a little bit of a time to go through them. My light's probably going to fail by that time, but I just thought why not? It's quite an interesting one, isn't it? Interesting view on Brexit from someone who has said before that leaving the EU is not a good idea. From your perspective, Mrs. May is trying to get us out ASAP, yet from a Leaver's perspective, I feel it's all a big pre-planned theatre show by our mainly Remainer Parliament and the EU to make us think that we are negotiating leaving, when in fact there was never any intention for us to leave. it will end up with Article 50 being revoked, I feel. But then the reason I voted leave will happen, and the Lisbon Treaty will come into full force, and we will have to join the euro as our veto ends. That will do far more harm to our country than crashing out without a deal would ever do. I much prefer to watch you follow the path of Nibiru. Do love your channel, politics aside. Well, I love comments like that. I really, really love comments like that. Look, the opening comment is a really, really, really good comment. You've got a Remainer here who's trying to see a lever, what do you call it, a lever, whatever you call them, leaving a totally respectable comment and making a really, really, really interesting kind of like educated response without anger. That kind of captures so much of kind of like the argument at the moment. How to answer that? I just think that why do all that? Why do all that to create? Why would the Tories do all that to create this whole thing to pull us out when we never had any intention to leave in the first place? I could see that as we're threatening to leave, maybe. And to make them, I do kind of see that. The way I see this is that the Tory party was split on this whole thing, so they kind of created UKIP as a way to kind of split the party without splitting the party, and to kind of gauge the amount of support or anything else like that for kind of having Brexit. It was all kind of like, the sheepdog and the shepherd working together. But really, Brexit aside, what is the ultimate intention? And clearly, as all of these people have made them repeatedly mentioned throughout this, Mayor of London, or ex-Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, and Farage himself, they're all talking about free trade deals. It's always free trade deals, like the same as the NAFTA Canadian agreement. And now, aside of all the complications of how you see the puppets that are working in this plan, which side they're on, whether she's a Remainer or whether May's a Remainer or a Leaver. For me, it's so obvious she's given to us as this Remainer. She really wants to keep us in, but actually, that there's a lot of stuff we don't know how much of this we're in control of, whether we've actually managed to slow Brexit down truly, or whether there was always this thing where she would lead us into this ultimatum, sort of like shotgun kind of like free trade agreement, with a shotgun behind us, but where if we don't leave by the 31st of kind of October, then we leave without a deal. And if we leave without a deal, that's not so much the problem. We can leave without a deal and suffer the consequences, sure, and everything else like that. But if we left without a deal and then signed a free trade agreement, if we signed a free trade agreement suddenly with America, immediately we signed that agreement, Macron would call an EU referendum. They would, a month later, they would be out and they would be signing that free trade agreement. And all the countries looking to sort of be part of kind of like the new kind of super economic hegemony, and within that framework, so they're within that whole kind of like that credit bracket where they can actually secure kind of revenue or borrow money and borrow enormous money for development and everything else like that. They're going to go with that. They're going to go wherever the money goes. And so if this happens and Britain joins this free trade agreement, it will be an attempt to drive all of Europe into this big free trade agreement. That's what the intention is at the moment. Even now, Trump doing sanctions, he just announced he's going to put more sanctions on the European Union, on goods bought from the European Union. This is all attempts to drive us into a new trade agreement. That if you don't follow a line here, then it's you know, the big bracket that we're really part of is NATO that's driving all this. This is the aggressive force behind all of this, ultimately. We know this. We can see this. Can't blame it all on the EU. The EU is flawed in many ways. But if the euro went down, would it have to take the European Union with it? So let's go down to the next one. Anyway, not sure how to say this, but you overemphasize your point when you speak. You just get to the point, and you will be more effective effective at reaching people. That's just my opinion. Okay, well, I'll probably do that loads. I'll probably do that all the way through this. Dave, Brexit's already decided. The only thing is playing out is the media talking heads stringing you all along. It's all a done deal, hun, and you'll be better off for it. Trust, keep the faith, love. EU is being done away with instead of countries are working towards. You're hard to find info. You're most welcome to check out my vids. I hate promoting, but I want you to have a full understanding of how MSM is stringing you along. Yes, Yellowstone is rocking. 5.0, I felt it. I'm only 20 kilometers from Yellowstone. We have an Earth facing a huge colonial hole coming around the sun. Be Earth facing soon. We live in an electric universe. I totally see that, and I mean, a Canadian viewpoint. It's quite interesting. It's a Canadian viewpoint actually coming there as well, you know. And I appreciate the comment. You know that you must know as well the agreement that has been done. That, you know, effectively, I don't think you had any agreement, any power over that agreement, as far as I'm understanding, because the Queen is your sovereign, I believe, as well as she is, you know, the sovereign of the British Isles and what have you, Great Britain, Commonwealth. She would have signed that deal that enabled. I'm assuming she would have had to sign over that deal to enable you to sign. She would have had to sign that NAFTA agreement that has led to you being the most sued nation on the planet. You know, you can't legislate against anything happening in Canada as a result of signing. You know, big corporations. You haven't won against one of the lawsuits that have come from America from this. You know, they're massive. Each one is to the tune of, if not tens, hundreds of billions of US dollars. It's just they cripple towns, cripple governments. That's what they're attempting to get us into. They call them now off-the-shelf kind of like agreements. They just allow for a country to be completely ripped apart under these member state dispute systems, which make what's happening in the European Union just seem like the European Union is an attempt to bring all these countries together, but to trade fairly, not freely, to bring fair trade into the whole thing. You know, it's been stopping genetically modified food, even though genetically modified food has been coming in because these massive kind of lobbying to change the way things are listed, so you can have 10% unlisted in some ways to allow for the trade coming in via Turkey being somehow involved with the what do they call it? It's the customs union. You know, it's so there's all this kind of weakening down already, but to completely break that apart, so genetically modified food can flood in to Europe, so everything can be fracked and everything else like that. That's not a forward step. That's a complete surrender of your sovereignty. But I do hear it, and I don't think it's a done deal. It was supposed to be a done deal like nearly 2 weeks ago, and everyone said it's going to be a done deal then. And I just think that we've got to stand up and realise, you know, that. So okay, so what do we do? And we'll just do as many as we can here, you know, just to get an idea, because I'm just going to get a feeling that really I'm not going to get a lot of support in this process. But I've wanted to give it energy, and I wanted to put myself up as a candidate. And maybe someone's going to come along and say, "No, Dave, I'm going to give you the $5 grand because I haven't got that amount of money, and it needs more than that to bring this whole message into this whole into this political arena." But if you're watching this, you know, we're just going to go through and just going to get an idea of just whether or not there is going to be any support for me running in this in the EU elections. while I do appreciate all your hard work, models, etc., I am unable to wrap around the Brexit EU issues with relating to celestial mechanics. It sounds utterly ridiculous to think that if Brexit the Brexit issue goes one way or another, that Planet X system will suddenly change direction or not. I hardly believe that Nibiru could care less what we as humans are doing if a celestial object, if it is a celestial object. If our sun cared about all of the evil that is presently on Earth with paedophilia, corruption, etc., it would have sent a solar flare so great that we would have been wiped out for failure for our failure as a species. Let's keep these things separate, Dave. Either talk about orbital mechanics or politics. I do, and I do like you. So I think, just keeping that public. I love comments like that. It's a very, very respectful comment. It's, but you understand that my message in this didn't come from this. My message in the whole of this, for me, was understanding the great, it's not that, as I said in the previous video, it's not what this is coming through, it's what's coming through humanity at the moment. And it's very, if Britain is used as the Trojan horse to break America, then it is being used in an act to create great war and to plunge this earth into great war. And when I was shown this, I wasn't shown Nibiru. I was just told, you approach the wall and nothing of war gets past this wall. And we are being used as a Trojan horse to draw America and much of Europe into these free trade deals where each country believes that they're going to get one over on the other because they're going to have the rights to do anything they like. But also they come as like a deal with the devil, and we have been very protected from this system by very, very high powers on this earth that keep this vibration high so life can exist. And this earth has been plagued with a lot of low vibrational subversions for quite a few thousand years, as I'm understanding it. But the only difference between then and now, certainly in not so much, well, I don't know how far but in the relatively recent history of the last kind of 2,000 or 3,000 years at least, and if not longer, maybe sort of like 5,000 to 10,000 years, this has been the first point that humanity has had this level of technology. And when you have the type of level of technology that we have at the moment, and you're of a warring state where we're just attacking each other, not aware that we're in a massive universe that is teeming with life, that is very concerned about our actions and our irresponsibility and unawareness of the peace, the clear peace that is occurring all around us. We come into a point of regulation where things get regulated, and that which is of war will be removed from this planet. That's what I was told. And it was through this process that I understood how this invasive kind of force was coming in to force us into these free trade agreements. And so that's why that's the political face of this for us. And that's why I talk about this. That's how I learned about this. Well, that's just how I learned about the nature of the wall that stands between us and these entering into these free trade agreements, which will be utterly conquered when we enter those. You can't legislate against anything. Canada can't win any of those cases. Canada can be now torn to pieces, piece by piece. Nothing can stand in the way of that type of corporate profit. Bigger than sort of like smaller countries' whole GDP, just to kind of even enter into that kind of legal contest. Jesus Memorial is on the 19th. Do remember the Last Supper. It's from Tosi BA's Sekrepatel. I can't even say that word. Sekrepatel. Sekrepatel. I can't say. I'm so sorry. Your thumbnail happened over Colombia and Ecuador a few months ago. Again, last night, April the 9th, 2019. I live in Ecuador. I live in the Ecuadorian Andes in a village called Gualanque. Oh, I'm so sorry about my spelling, my reading. Above Cuenca. I'm probably saying that completely wrong as well. And I saw that the same golden image. I saw that same golden image at about 6:45 p.m. local time. I wanted to take a picture or a video, but my phone is a little old and couldn't capture the image with strange light. So that was on April. That was on April the 9th. Next to the moon. This morning, 3 clouds rose in the east above the Amazonian mountains that were crimson red above. They were above the white sunrise. Wow. Thank you for that. Oh, look, secret pal. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to say some other word. I do that. My reading is so terrible. I think I'm an actual writer as well. I write books. You understand? Totally dyslexic. Always have been. Okay, Nibiru, UK. What will you tell the European electorate about Nibiru? Or are you joining the elite to deceive us? Aren't they responsible for the deceit? So we'll look at some of the replies on this, by the way. Yes, the politics of the planet is just another way to deceive human beings. I'm not done here. I'm just passing the love through Christ, our Creator, and we are teaching. I'm so happy we're okay. Hi, if Dave does not support their globalist ideas, and if he mentions Nibiru, he will be sectioned. Comment taken from subscriber in Daily Express today. Yes, very. Oh my goodness me, this is a big one. Okay. Dave does not support their global ideas, and if he mentions Nibiru, he will be sectioned. Comment taken from the subscriber in the Daily Express today. OD, you are being very emotional with the truth here. Inherent in Brexit are 4 core principles without which there is no leave. Sovereignty of the Parliament as our law-making body. Sovereignty of Parliament as our law-making body. Okay, this is a really, really good comment. This has come from this Nibiru UK has asked this very, very interesting question. It's led to some very interesting comments. This is just like beautiful. This is incredible. You see, number one, sovereignty of Parliament as our law-making body. Now, it's true. If we leave the EU and all our lawmaking is brought into the UK, great news. Okay, job done. I see it. But are those who are pushing this agenda not going to sign you straight into a free trade agreement where you surrender all your lawmaking body into a member state dispute system where you have no control over it unless you can afford billions and billions and billions and billions of pounds or dollars? Okay, second, withdraw from the single market so as to prevent freedom of movement. Terrifying. I.e. the ability to control our borders. I mean, to prevent freedom of movement, does that mean that we can't, it's totally draconian for me, that is. Number 3, withdraw from the ECJ, European Court of Justice, is that? Sovereignty of European Court of Justice. Sovereignty So they can't touch us. So basically, Tony Blair can never be dragged off to The Hague for any type of crime that he's done. You know what I mean? He's free from that. You know what I mean? He's the one we're giving up as pro-European, and he's the one who stands most to gain. He can never be dragged off to The Hague. Great. Sovereignty of our courts, except that we give those up if we join these member state dispute systems, which come with these free trade agreements. That apparently it's an off-the-shelf item that has led to Canada being the most sued nation on the planet. Can you see that the Brexiteers have all kind of got this kind of like, have all got this kind of like idea? I mean, this is fantastic, fantastic comment, Angela. It really is. You know, I want to kind of repair the kind of rift between both sides here. Do you get what I'm saying? Because I'm understanding that that's what I would like. You know, maybe I wouldn't like so much like the kind of like, I wouldn't like the kind of like the lack of movement, but I would like the you know, because I think the opening up the movement in Europe has been a fantastic thing. Opening up the single market has been a fantastic thing, but if it has got limitations because it's trying to, as much as anything else, operate on something which is a fair trade basis, as I'm understanding it. Even though many different kind of like corporations come in and they kind of buy bits of legislation and they do their bits and pieces which control what comes in different ways. And manipulates the market. You know, maybe one product has got a you know, too much of some kind of like some mineral or something in it, and so the EU says, look, we can't have this for this product from this particular country at this time because it's got too much of this in it at that stage, and it doesn't meet kind of EU standards. You know, that such a law can such a trade kind of like relation, if you like, through the EU that can be seen as a law that says what we can and can't take, creates this kind of place where it can manipulate the market massively to where one product is where people are forced to buy products from different places because of these kind of like these what would you call them, environmental kind of ecological kind of like these decisions. Well, you know, it's not about GM and that sort of stuff, but sometimes it's just about, you know, toxicity and different things like that. But overall, the kind of the whole idea, as I was left, it's a bit kind of like rose-colored glasses and all the rest of it, but it is kind of an idea that the European Union as a kind of like as a trading bloc has had enormous kind of regulation on the quality of the produce, and whether it's GM or not, and keeping out GMs, and I don't know. So, okay, Lady Elk. It's hard to comprehend why you would want to support a neoliberal world order giving up the sovereignty of a nation or a state to determine their own fate. The EU is just the beginning of world control. It will not give you organic anything. It will be Monsanto all the way. I'm Canadian. I must disagree with your perspective. The whole EU will eventually fall. People do not people do not live under complete control forever. I'm from Canada, you know. She says, well, obviously we keep mentioning the whole thing about Canada and being in this tied up to NAFTA in this free trade agreement, that like they've never lost a single case. They can't stop. They can't legislate against a lot of this sort of stuff. I mean, why must we break up the EU? Why must we break up the EU? What is the massive need to break it up? You know, and like I say, when we leave, we will attempt to draw all the other countries in it into a free trade agreement, so they're out of all the same types of control. They can't be regulated by EU trade standards. People don't hate Europe; they hate European Union. Separate issue, just like Planet X and politics. Good point. Please stick with the Nibiru, or better yet, make separate vids. Dave Red Kachina, positive, and Blue Kachina, negative poles. So when one reaches the top of the other, the bottom of Earth, and the pole reversal will occur. Can we talk about that? Is Brexit the demise that the pole shift will be? I think we have to put this in perspective. all hell is about to occur. Let's talk about that. So, like I say, for me, the big political play out that is occurring right now, and where we humanity position ourselves in all this, will determine how this affects us so massively more than you can ever realize. It's a very difficult thing to it's a very difficult thing to conceive what is being attempted here by all of this, but breaking up the European Union and blaming all the woes that the American and the British government have done in kind of like in the Middle East, and throwing all this blame on Europe is going to come at a price. So what we hear, Greg Blesh, Brexit and Iberia go together like Elizabeth Taylor and and Mom's Babley. I guess both topics are going around in circles, giving something in common. Yes, thank you, Dave, and keep going on with it. Very imminent for all of us. Dave, please think about what info you want to bring the public through politics. I think you will be in danger if you bring this info of Planet X on Iberia to the public. The powers that be control what is released to the public, and will never let the dissemination of your hard work, dissemination of all your hard work. And if you try, I believe you could be putting yourself at risk. I respect what you're trying to do, but above all else, you need to be safe. People have mysteriously disappeared trying to publicize information like this. Yeah, thank you for that. Unfortunately, you know, for me, for so many of the answers that I've got, I've had to stand in the political arena, because that's the kind of message that I get. If I want to understand the truth, I have to just look at the truth, and sometimes we have to stand in our sovereign truth to see it. And that's why I place myself in these political positions, so I can speak that truth in that environment. But also, when you stand in that environment, you stand in the lineage of great wisdom, because they are very powerful places to stand, because they have so much. You have so much more power over what is happening in this in your realm. I'm just going to run out and have a just stop that share for a shake, and just going to pause you there. One shake, onto the loop. So sorry, just moved position here a little bit. Light's going, so I've just set up a little light, and it's a bit bright, but maybe not that bright, but maybe bright enough though. So back to these comments then. Where were we? We were we're on Safari here. Simple man, we definitely have more control of our future than we are led to believe. I live in the USA. We are living in a political nightmare, almost hard to find, even almost too hard to even fathom. But if our reality, but it is our reality somehow. We are not the nation of fools we appear to be right now, yet here we are somehow. Positive energy to the entire world. Let's keep up with positivity. That I agree with. I believe kind of like looking for a I'm just going to switch my kettle off there. Looking for a positive outcome. You know, I'd like to see a positive outcome with this. Certainly all the atrocities in the world, I don't want to see them all get lumped on Europe right now. but you can kind of get the gist of the comments at the moment that I don't think I'm going to get a lot of support from my, I mean, it's early stage in the comments here, and there's hundreds to go through, with 130 or something like that. And whether we'll get a chance to go through them all, I'm going to try and keep it going, and maybe you can hear it, and I'll just drop my feedback into your comments. So, because many of you got questions as well, and I'll just try and answer as many other things as I can about, as I understand what's going on as relative to your comments. But the feeling I'm getting, obviously, is that the EU is to blame for most things at the moment, and you're going to, and all these things that you've been promised in Brexit are all the things you're going to effectively, as far as they're openly saying that they're pushing for this free trade deal. So it's not hidden what this free trade deal consists of. These member state dispute systems where you surrender all sovereignty to these, it becomes, everything falls prey to the legal to a legal battle, and that is just all merited on how much money you've got. Freedom Bill. The EU was a Nazi plan to dominate Europe. If you think Nibiru is real, why do you even waste your time thinking about the EU? Well, you see, I would argue that the EU has come together after the Second World War as a result of all the, that's what we finally got out of the Second World War, after all the fighting, all the profiteering from all the warmongers and all the weapons makers and all the gold diggers and kind of the spoils of that great war. What we finally got out of that was a European alliance, a European Union, where we all come together and sit at the same great table. I mean, that to me is evolution. If we got something out of it, out of all the profiteering from all the big corporations. I mean, Hitler used, as I'm understanding it, he used Ford engines in many of his vehicles. You know, that's how he had a picture of Henry Ford behind him on his desk at one stage. You know, this was a big corporate show of massive profiteering. America did very well out of the Second World War. Better than anyone else, it seems. To break up the European alliance right now and then feed all those countries into a Canadian-style trade agreement where we surrender all our sovereignty, at least. I don't know. For me, no, you know, Nibiru is very relative to this, because this is the great fist of God, effectively. You know, it's sometimes from a theological perspective. I mean, hearing some of the other video makers just recently talking about Gong Gong. I think the relentless maverick had started this whole crazy thing because he called a planet Gong Gong, and then suddenly found out that there really was a planet called Gong Gong, or maybe not a planet, but like a water god, Chinese water god. That maybe I got that up there or something. Gong Gong. Yeah, I'll just flash that page up because Evolutionary Arts and WSO and kind of like, and they're all mentioning Gong Gong, and of course Gong Gong is kind of the Chinese equivalent of Gong Gong is the kind of Chinese equivalent of, in terms of their theology, in terms of their mythology. This is Gong Gong is known from the late Warring States period. Gong Gong appears to be in the ancient heavenly questions. Another point, it was something about the goddess Nura cut off the legs of the giant turtle Ao, A-O, however you pronounce that, and used them in place of the fallen pillar, ending the floods and suffering. She was, however, unable to fully correct the tilted sky and earth and alter their effects on the sun, moon, and stars, and the rivers in China. So this thing is something that is absolutely massive, that can alter the whole axis of the earth. This anyway, this kind of like, whatever we want to call this Nibiru, this great power, it's the kind of like, it represents the kind of the mighty fist of, in all of our theology, it seems, around the globe, and it removes that which it does not like, and it's sometimes quite brutal about the way it goes about it. But whether we can suddenly blame the EU for all the evils of the world and just suddenly walk the EU out to the kind of like, to the guillotine and chop the EU up and say the EU done it all, when we just know it's not the EU that has done all of this. We know that once the EU is broken, all of these smaller countries are vulnerable. And then it's a terrifying situation. What we want is to stabilize situations, not rip them apart right now. Please separate your political views from what's going on with the planet. Your channel is viewed by us Brexiteers, and it's frustrating that you're so ill-informed on the workings of the European Union. You are living in a dolly daydream. As I said before, read the Lisbon Treaty and wise up, Dave. That's the best help I can give. So Goldie Girl, thank you for that. And thank you for putting your kind of like your strong views so politely. Because you're firmly in that camp, but you've got a lot of respect in that camp. And I'm going to look at the comments that are really just rude and outright. We're going to do some laundry here, But it's a strong comment and everything else like that. And but to me, they are the same thing. Goldie Girl, they are the same thing. You want to understand how this affects us. We are choosing how this affects us by the decisions we're making right now, and where we choose to align right now. And I try and offer as much evidence of that. Even our government's openly talking about going into this free trade deal, what it means entering into a member state dispute system where courtroom processes are done behind closed doors. And they're just ridiculous amounts of money to the tune of billions and billions and billions, hundreds, if not, tens, if not hundreds of billions there. You can't stand in the way of them. And these are what carve up our sovereignty, where we can't protect ourselves against them. And then we are truly conquered. And if these institutions attempt to drive us into war, then these institutions are not in favor with the great powers that come with this celestial object. And if we're out of favor with that, we kind of go under the wheels of that. And what we stand to do at the moment is, by leaving Europe, is losing favor with a lot of the assistance we're getting at the moment. Thank you for your message. I'm just on the other side of the fence, and I see, I get the idea of what the Lisbon Treaty. I don't really get it and that sort of stuff, but nonetheless, I just understand that though the Brexiteers want this thing that they believe they're going to get, they will get this, but won't it be signed away straight, all gone when you sign a free trade agreement? If they take us into a NAFTA-style free trade agreement with America, won't all of that you had in one moment be gone in a far worse way than it was ever gone with the European Union, which is about fair trade? I know there's problems with the European Union. I know there's problems with the European Commission, but the European Commission, as I keep saying, is actually made up of all the member states of all the countries within the European Union. So as though it seems that there's all these processes that are done behind our back, it's actually done in processes with the heads of states of all those countries within the European Union. It's not as bad you know, we keep putting Tony Blair up as our main rep for Europe, and they just do it just so you hate Europe, and you're like, I hate Tony Blair, but really you hate Europe, but really you hate Tony Blair, and they use him as a puppet to drive so much hate about the European Union. And we've got to be so careful about the scapegoating that's being done here and what we're being led into. So Lee Whitney here. So thanks for a beautiful share. Always with you. Thank you for that. Dave, thanks for your update. Britain controlled by Germany, EU, Brexit. I mean, you understand that all the money's coming in via Britain, really. The great lion's share of the money actually comes in via Britain. 700 trillion US dollars, equivalent to every year, you know, money moving in and out via the City of London. It's massive British influence on this, you know. And what do the Germans do, which is so terrible? They make really good quality cars. They make really good quality unpolluted beer. You know, they spray their cars with water-based paints. They make really quite environmental. I know there was all that stuff about the Passat, but that was just, you know, the Passat, the big, evil, horrible car that's, and then, you know, up against in America, you know, this is all just Euro bashing against these massive gas guzzlers the Americans drive. You know, these huge kind of they're so common, you know, these muscle cars anymore, but it's still a big part of the American economy. It's just why suddenly you all just go to war on a 1.9 diesel, supposedly slightly, you know, these are super high efficiency engines, no matter which way you slice them. You know, it's the concept of building all these new cars to replace all the old cars. And as I always say, you know, each car consumes 100 times more fuel, you know, in its manufacture than the car will ever consume in its lifetime. So at least Germany do specialize in making better quality cars. But the reality of making a car to replace another car, that's because this car is going to be slightly more efficient. No, it's going to cost 100 times more fuel to drive this whole economy, for us to take all that money that we took from investing into the property market in mortgages and ripping all that money out and just driving it all into the new car market. So you can't get, you know, everyone else is just subprime in their mortgages. So all the money's just been driven into sort of like into business and the new car industry. And so the middle classes have kind of had all the money ripped out of the kind of like out of the property market extensively, and certainly new time buyers can't get involved in this whole thing. And suddenly we're going to these cars which just massively depreciating in value. I see them all the time. These beautiful looking BMWs going for like, you know, that are like 10, 15 years old, going for like $1,500 and dotted around England. You see them all the time. You know, it's just like, if that had been a house, that would have massively appreciated in value, not depreciated in value. That money was just like, I don't know. It's just like we're in a massive manipulation that's operating on so many different fronts to goad us one way and the other, and that sort of stuff. And the massive kind of scapegoat at the moment is the EU. And the massive intention is, like I say, to get us all into free trade agreements. So let's move down. You're very out of touch with the British vibe on Brexit. I wonder what the Brexiteers really want. What is the British vibe exactly? The vibe that won. The vibe that won big, bad, Brian. Does not like anybody's won or winning, though, does it? Does not like anybody's won or winning. I get what he's saying, I think. Does it? Oh, okay, buddy, you're another one that likes to forget about majority democracy. It's okay though, Brian, my man, I respect you. I get to it. I won't get it because I get all these different I see all these different arguments here, and And this whole argument here, ultimately, that's come down to this whole thing that you're very out of touch with vibrant Brexit, and that we won. You won this kind of like. It was a very misinformed. You might have won, but you won potential access into a free trade agreement with America. You're not going to get this Brexit dream because they're going to take you out of this Brexit and then take you straight into a trade agreement like the European Union. But there's not a fair trade agreement. It's a free trade agreement. So you can't stop any kind of cooperation. I know I keep coming back to this point, but you were given David Cameron, who told you he was a Remainer, and yet he was the one who called the election. He was the one who, as I said before in the previous videos, shot the puppy on the carpet. I mean, you see the other side of the picture here. He was the one. You got Theresa May, also fed to us as a Remainer, who absolutely has got her teeth into her deal for leaving, and she is just holding the whole country at shotgun. I'll drive it into the. I will kind of like, I will ground this country into the rocks unless you sign my deal. And she's supposed to be a Remainer. The whole thing. And then you've got Tony Blair up as a Remainer as well, the most hated politician on the face of the globe. It's vital you stay in Europe for the war on terror. Guys, see through this kind of like manipulation and realize this is just an attempt to get you into this free trade deal. Rise up with Risey. First brother, keep safe. Thank you. Predicting dark stars on a daily basis on my channel. Thanks, man. Long live the United Kingdom. Hi Dave, bless you for your hard work. How's your mum? My mum is okay. I went up and put some special oil that my ex-partner gave me to put on her for her swelling and that sort of stuff today, because she's had the radio recently, but she's kind of like, I think she's doing all right. Thank you. Peace and love from Australia, Kim. Bless you. They tell lies. No Brexit. Never was. Never will be. You see the whole thing. I think the whole plan here is to get as many people into this free trade agreement and keep threatening this and try and pull this all in line where subtly as soon as Britain pulls out, the union falls apart and everyone joins these free trade agreements, and everyone's going to live happily ever after. So we've got another one here. Mark Ward, unsubscribed. The people voted out democracy is dead because of people like you. I've watched you for years, but now you've become political bye-bye. And I see that as well. I see that. You can imagine, if I was trying to do this just sort of to win subscribers and everything else like that, it's and to keep advertising going and stuff like that. But and Mark, all I can say is I'm so sorry, mate. You know what I mean? All I can tell you is that it's not so much that I'm pro-European. I just am European, mate. And the message I got from this whole thing was seeing what happens if we leave, and what we will be at what our attempt to leave and join this free trade agreement, and then to drive as many other countries around us into a free trade agreement. It's like us being used as a Trojan horse to break up the European Union and then feed us all into a massive, if we want it, just like they're doing, just like NATO is doing with sort of like with Brazil and Colombia, saying, if you want in, you've got to invade Venezuela. If we want into this new agreement, we'd all have to come together and be a mighty power. Where are we going to be fed in this great battle to make America great again, to make this US dollar the greatest currency on the planet? But who's going to get fed into this massive great war? There's another side to this equation, and that this Planet X comes about as a result of it's here to regulate aggression on this planet. So JJ Jody, Billy Moore, what's that? Billy Billy Meyer contract report tells you what to expect. The Destroyer comet has been diverted. It's not coming for a long time now. The system is here, of course. Apophis is a big threat. Just saying. Apophis is a big threat. Just saying. Peace and love. Thank you, Dave, for all your hard work. Thank you. Thank you so much there. The guy has lost the plot. Poor man. Well, there's a lot of people who've said that to me over the years. We've got a lovely shot from Steve here from the WSO. Bless you, Steve. I've only got a cup of tea, but toasting your good health, mate. Love you, Dave Dobbs. But you already know that, didn't you? Bless you, Steve. Hi, Dave. My name is Tommy, and I write you from New Hampshire, USA. I was wondering if you have read Being in It for the Species. If so, what do you think? Okay, so what people are saying here? He's in it for the money, and the globalist did not notice how upset he was when King John lost his treasure. Sorry, I don't understand. All I did was ask Dave if he read a book. I wasn't putting him down at all. I'm actually a fan. For you, I suggest you stop thinking everybody is a shitbag because this makes you look ugly. Being it for the species, then you know it is just the freedom from the bondage we seek. You hear Dave supporting the globalists, and you ask him about a book that talks about being free from the shackles of slavery. You are supporting. I think Dave has issues and does not understand politics very well. All is about money. All is about money, not God. Excuse my reading there. I'm just terrible reading. Always have been, but what's your deal? What's your deal? Marshall Masters being in it for the species. Oh, was it Marshall Masters who did Being in It for the Species? It's a book by Marshalls about Planet Nibiru. Okay, it has nothing to do with world leaders. Knock it off. Obviously, have no clue about, I don't know. So that was the book. Sorry about that. So what do I think about In It for the Species? Well, I've obviously watched. I've not read it actually, but I've obviously followed Marshall Masters for years. When I first kind of started getting into Planet X, it was loads of his videos I watched and that sort of stuff. And then obviously I've built up my timeline over the years. Just based on astronomical sightings, and it was only obviously very recently that we actually managed to start piecing together how the sightings that we'd seen since 2011 and the kind of seismic activity we'd also seen, the 2004 kind of like tsunami and the tsunami in 2011 and the big earthquake, 1 year and 13 days before, and all these different big seismic events, like we can predict at the moment that Kilauea is so obviously going to go off because, we don't know to what extent it's going to happen, but we can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be some extensive activity going on Kilauea for the next kind of like 4 to 6 weeks, we can imagine. There's a lot of patterns here that are just kind of like we can't ignore. So we've got this is Annie Richards. This is our story now. Cheek kisses with kindness and peace added for everyone. Oh, bless you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I heard of George S. I heard Obama was visiting and speaking, saying he wants to help Europe along. Yeah, you got to be. We hear about all these things because he also came into the House of Commons. He stepped into the House of Commons, saying exactly what Tony Blair was saying. It's vital that you stay in Europe for the war on terror. And yet, where this all goes is ultimately a free trade deal with America, where where Britain or America could both be massively shafted by such an agreement, unrestricted, kind of like unrestricted unrestricted legislation, restricted legislation, unrestricted legislation, a complete tearing up of just kind of like, you can't stop anything that where corporations can make profit in your water, in your kind of like in your healthcare, in your genetics, in your vegetables, in your food, in your kind of like in every aspect. Corporations can step in, and you cannot stand in the way of that. And whatever is achieved and whatever case is broken through in any one country can suddenly be done in all the other countries, just like late stage abortions, just to be done just to be legalized in New York. That means that any country that joins this free trade agreement with America or enters into such a free trade agreement with America, you could do that in any other country. You could lobby to do that, and you could fight that in a law case. You could fight that in a case of in a court, but it would be done in a private courtroom. If it was a corporation and they wanted to protect their intellectual property, they would have the right to do that in a closed door court process. So so I heard Obama speaking as well, and it's goading. It's just kind of cattle. It's like cattle prods, using all these different politicians in all these different ways to control the electorate and how they think. It's all it is. They've got you hating Europe at the moment. You're convinced that Europe's the big baddie, but Europe is not the one who's been dragging you into all these wars, that has been pushing all this genetically modified food, that has been driving this whole fracking agenda. Going the wrong way. It's kind of like going in the wrong direction. Pan PD W, the most respect. For the love of God, when telling a story or just making a point, get on with it as quickly, as directly as possible. You drag on through your presentation. I'm with you on believing your message, but write down your bullet points and make them. You folks, your message may not appreciate, and sooner pick up a bigger, or you might pick up a bigger audience, whatever. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Pandy. I'm terrible. I'm so sorry. Shirley Graham, thank you, Dave. I find you truly. I find you are truly trying to help, whatever the outcome is. At least you are trying to do something. It's more than most are willing to do. Much hugs and much love. Many blessings to you and your dear mum. Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. Thank you. Joey Calico in Chicago this morning. The fake clouds very heavy. There was white sunrise peeking out of the clouds. Also purple reds east of it. And on the west side there was a reddish light peeking out. It was crazy. Joey, thank you so much for sending that through. Jez Allen, your comments on Brexit destroy your credibility completely. Goodbye. And I'm sorry about this, Jez. I'm sorry about this. It is one of those things where everything I've been doing has been trying to make you see that Europe is not the baddie in this. All I ask you to think, Jess, is if Brexit is delivered by the Tories and you are sovereign, as listed out by the Brexiteers of how they see sovereignty, how they see Brexit, Britain after Brexit, would that not be signed away in this free trade agreement? That's all I'm asking you. And if that was the case and we eroded any type of sovereign power we have left in our countries because we can't challenge the legal stature of that because we haven't got the money, so we go under the wheels of that, then are we not conquered by an agenda that is truly at total war with the world? But they want to take us in this free trade agreement. So Jez, thanks again. Thanks for your time. At least hopefully in the time that we spent, kind of like if you spent watching my channel, I hope that in this process, as much as anything else, I've given you a chance to understand some of his movements. These things that motivate me of the message that I've been given, you know, that not to leave Europe, not to end up blaming Europe for all the woes of what the British and the American government has done and all these big corporate agendas. There's a lot to be said for countries that can all come together and sit at a table in peace. This great round table that we're all part of is more powerful than I think you're quite giving it credit. But your comment was very polite, and thank you for telling me such an intensely powerful message, or you know, so politely. Thank you. So Carol Smith, I've been praying for England. I've been praying that England would leave the EU. We are so thankful in the US to be getting rid of the elites. Sovereignty is the best. I don't know what to make of that. You know, it's kind of like, you know, and I see total respect in the comment, and I'm sure it's meant with respect. It's just where we're choosing to create the scapegoats of all the woes that are happening in the world right now, and what our purpose is for blaming Europe for everything at the moment. You know, load of bollocks. Kiss. Well, I'm not for the EU, and it's one of the 3 regional takeovers of the Bilderbergers, I believe, notwithstanding my moto, whatever that is, moto, which people try to reduce for me. I don't know much about what he's trying to say there, sorry. But oh, my motto, sorry. Notwithstanding my motto, for which people try and reduce for me. I don't know what to say about the EU on that, really. You know, it's one of those things, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, we are going down the corridor where it is. You know, I don't think if we break up the EU, it's going to be a good situation. I think it's going to have massive knock-on effects. I mean, there's a lot of other things happening at the moment that we have to understand. You know, the Chinese are kind of apparently releasing their gold-backed currency at the moment, and it's going on to the. You know, I don't know a lot about it, and I've followed it for quite a long time, and it's been a long, ongoing process, and it's had lots and lots of different stages in it, and there's been various countries, obviously, that have also challenged kind of US petrodollar hegemony, you know, and we've seen that all for kind of like, we've seen that, you know, quite a bit in the last kind of like, in the last 100 years, certainly with the First World War and the Second World War. And sort of like, you know, we saw it with Saddam Hussein, We saw it with Gaddafi. And we saw it with, we've seen it with Iran, we've seen it with Syria. Certainly we've seen Syria nearly setting ourselves up as an independent sort of like a trading force. You know, they were setting up for sort of like for opening up on a massive international kind of like level in 2009, and they got absolutely destroyed. And of course, Iran, similar. You know, they opened up an international oil bourse, which enables them to sort of like to operate big offshore kind of like oil sales outside of the US dollar. You know, there's been all these various challenges to US dollar hegemony. The Russians have been the same. The kind of like, certainly the whole, where the British buys kind of like American oil now, American gas, and sort of like or Russian, you know, the whole embargoes everywhere, the whole thing, you know, this is a massive, great, all these things root back to a big challenges rooting back to the bankers and the currencies and who's controlling those currencies. And that's right what we're in right now. That's where the whole kind of structure of this is all going at the moment. There's a much, much bigger thing that's unfolding right now. That's bigger than what Brexit is just on its own. The kiss of Neville. Good morning, Dave. Morning. You're right. We have to get through this. Hey, Dave. Are we to expect the worst of the effects before or after it passes the ecliptic? There was an ancient story that talked about destruction happening once the god disappeared. Once the god disappeared below the horizon. That's interesting, because I've been wondering the same thing. I've been wondering the same sort of thing. You know, logic. No, I can't say that it would be logic. Sometimes I feel like it would be directly on the opposite side. So, what would I say? Like, if we saw it crossing around about sort of like January the 21st. So, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. Would that be? But then that, you know, even then, I sort of think that's the opposite side of the kind of like that's the opposite side of the solar system to the 21st of January to, you know, 2019, where we last saw the big transit, and now we're coming into this point. Is it there? Could it be before there? Could it be after that? I could imagine that the whole kind of orbital angle of the system going through of one kind of the angle of its ecliptic as it descends and it goes through. I can imagine that point of the ecliptic, the point where the ecliptic crosses our ecliptic. If you can imagine, that angle is dipping down ever more depending on which direction the actual planet X system is following. But you know, I always get so confused myself, really, and I change my mind a lot with the system or with more information. And obviously, we've been getting a lot more information over the last year. We've had more information coming in over the last year that's helped us upgrade the model massively. But overall, you can get the perspective that we know it must be moving. It's following this red and this blue kachine, that the whole system is moving. And if the whole system is moving, if it's moving at an angle, which it does appear to be moving at an angle, then by rights, the point it crosses the ecliptic is also moving. And the kind of logic is that if it's going down, if it's at this, I mean, what does that mean at this, when I'm holding my hand at that angle, but it's descending from the kind of northern hemisphere in to cross and descend into the southern aspect of our solar system at some point now or in the next in the next number of months. But I'd imagine that if it was kind of like, if we suggest it would cross around about the most intense point of the kind of like the volcanoes in Hawaii last year. So it started on May the 4th, lasted for about 6 weeks. So it kind of like, you know, around about kind of like, you know, the 21st of May, that would, we could guess maybe that's the point that it crossed the ecliptic, possibly. That's a way of considering that could have been the kind of crossing point at that stage. And we're literally just experiencing we're experiencing the last parts of, primarily the last parts of the system, the furthest orbiting object finally plunging through the ecliptic to disappear completely away for another 169 years before we begin this again. So I do. So yeah, I'd imagine they are moving. I imagine it's in a state of flux, and I can imagine that it's probably going to move. That clip to that crossing point is probably going to move back, just like Nibiru moves back 1 calendar month every year. I can imagine that point of crossing drops back a certain amount also in itself. And that depends on the speed that the planet system is moving largely, which is also a very difficult thing to calculate. So there's lots of unknowns there. And I don't know if I've made it any clearer. Sorry. But yeah, obviously it's going to go, you know, but just to finish that, once it's going faster than us. So once it overtakes us, we are then at some point or other very close to the tail, and that's why I called it Asteroid Alley, because once that's overtaken us, yeah, we're in a different type of hazard then. Up until kind of, well, it's just difficult to say. That's kind of like it's whenever it finally passes us to the kind of like it overtakes us to the point of to the point when we're finally far enough away from it where where it can't affect us anymore in this cycle until we get around to kind of like that August September time again. And then obviously then, you know, there seems to be 3 fundamental cycle points where it really affects us, doesn't it? This point we're coming into right now, that kind of like August September kind of point where we saw the tsunami last year, and this kind of like, and this crossing point, this grand eclipse point, this possible eclipse point around about so like late January. So it's kind of like, and we don't know, maybe this year it's gone so much below us this year that it doesn't affect us that much, and Kilo Hour is not so massively affected. We just really don't know. And yet all I can tell you is that the message I was given by all of this is that the choices that we make now and where we align ourselves will be the big deciding factor of how this affects us most of all. Why not forget about it, Davey? I ran in 93 EDM. I ran in 93 EDM AB for provincial election. The Sea Reaps run the show. I don't know what he means by that. The Sea Reaps. Sorry, sometimes I'm a little bit kind of, Davey, wake the Patriots, forget the election. C.L. Van Horn. Interesting. C.C. Perkins, believe nothing you hear and half believe nothing you hear and half of what you see, and you'll do all right. I'm thinking of you. I'm thinking of Dave. I'm thinking old Dave is part of. I'm thinking old Dave is part of the elite. Yeah, I can see how people could kind of see that if you kind of like, why, if, you know, it's, as I keep saying, if we get led into these free trade agreements, we get carved up so much worse than we can ever realize. You know, we are, you know, why are we scapegoating Europe all the time here? You know, like I say, you know, CC, would we not be signed up to a free trade agreement by the Tories? You know, to America, that leaves us to become one of the most sued nations. You just give up all sovereignty to this closed courtroom process. Is none of what the Brexiteers ever dreamed of wanting. You know, I can understand if we left and we're all going to be independent and give it all up, but you know that's not the case. You know that massive corporations are behind all of this. That Farage wants his trade deal. That you know that Boris is all about doing this free trade deal. They're all about signing up to this thing. What possible good can it be signing up to an agreement where you can't legislate against any type of corporate profit? Utterly fracked. Funky Blue. Good morning, Dave. I hit the like button, but my thumb up disappeared afterwards. Tried it again. Same thing. What the fuck? What the hell? Excuse me. Excuse my French. Excuse my not my French. I always say that, and it's such a bad phrase, isn't it? Excuse me. What the hell? Okay, so that says a lot, doesn't it? I know. I mean, it's you know, this is, you know, if the money doesn't turn up for this, and I doubt very much it will, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of anyone watching out there, to give you an idea that, you know, I checked my PayPal today or yesterday and I saw £10 had gone into it. And so I do realise that I kind of realise that this £5,000 to run is not going to come. And it's okay. It's okay. But also, we have to try, you know, we have to try and follow our hearts. And this is the message that came through to me. And I'm, you know, I've got no big invested interest in the European Union, other than it's just like, other than I'm part of Europe, you know, and I'm not a big corporation or anything else like that. But I tell you, when I go into Europe, when I travel around, I love it. I love going into Europe. I love being out there. I love being up in France. I love how cultured the people are, and I love the openness of being able to be part of that. And you know, a peaceful Europe that's united is quite a powerful thing. So what have we got here? So, oh my goodness, this is a really big one. So I'm just going to hold that up there. I might not be able to get all through this, Angela, first. Dave, I understand what you are. Dave, understand what you are not grasping. The EU is not what you think. If we have a customs union, soft Brexit, we are tied to a European superstate. Well, I do get that. Can I just hold you there? I get, why would we want to be part of the customs union and not be able to make any decisions in the European Union? If we're going to be bound by the union, we might as well be in the union and be able to make decisions. I totally see that. So a soft Brexit, we are tied to the European superstate. And we keep calling it like an evil sort of superstate, but this is a massive trading bloc that we've had a chance to be with, that's got all these kind of environmental legislation and fair trade involved. So, okay, so if you mention Nibiru, they will have you second. So you segregate Bristol from the east of England. Good luck. You do realise that if you mention Nibiru, you also could be fined for misinfo, section 11 and 13 of the new law just passed. Jesus said that false prophets would come in his name, supporting the devil. Oh, this is, you see, this could, I mean, that just adds to my, that would just add fuel to my case, I think, you know, ultimately. You know, I'm just talking about bringing the truth of this into the kind of like into the arena, so we can talk about real things affecting this earth, not this kind of like parroted story. So we could actually attempt to enter this arena and not see this whole thing as something that's been set up to imprison you. But what happens if this whole thing is what you have won, and that if when you involve yourself in this thing, you have enormous, you can express the will of the people through this system. Well, you know, there's no election, like I say, in NATO. You know, it's, we have to integrate with this system, surely. Anyway, so she's saying it's a deal with the devil, supporting the devil. A really good explanation of the customs union trade deal has been succinctly explained by a comment from another taken from the Daily Express today. Oh dear, you are being very economic with the truth here, inherent in Brexit. Okay, we've done this, haven't we? Okay, sorry, yeah. So she bought this. I think she bought this up as well before. Anyway, so we kind of went through this little thing, and we suddenly realised that sovereignty of Parliament as our law-making body. And all I'm saying is, if it was that, just that, would we not give that up if we joined a free trade agreement? That was the main body of what Brexit was really, everyone was talking about, and sovereign rights to make our own laws. Would we not give that up if we joined a free trade agreement with America? Would we not? And I think you'll find we would. So the range, a thought, they could be the same size, but one is further away. I was so excited to see, but was walking the dog with no phone. I thought they could be the same size, but one is further away. I think we're talking about the twins here, how we keep seeing the twins and what have you. So they really could be. They really, really, really could be. Very, very difficult to say how big one is and the other one. You know, like I say, I kind of more see him as kind of Shiva and Parvati. You know, this is how this theology all came together. So, oh look, we've got a comment from Roger Paul here, who I showed quite a lot in the in several of the videos, because he's caught some amazing shots. And I don't know what Roger thinks about kind of some of my opinions about kind of Europe and everything else like that. I mean, you know, these are my opinions and my feelings about not blaming Europe for all the wars that Britain and America has done, and not blaming Europe for sort of like for trying to stop genetically modified food, and not see that as a threat to the world, and not blaming Europe for trying to stop fracking, and not blaming Europe for, you know, it's kind of like, that's where I'm going with it. I'm just trying to bring some sight that we don't have to make this situation so terribly bad. We could just slow all this down and realize maybe Europe isn't the baddie. So what's Roger Paul said? He said, Dave, I believe Wacky Navgeek channel got this as well. I showed a few of his photos in my last video. He lives in India and he's getting some interesting things. Thanks for all the info. God bless you, brother. I've showed that in some of my previous videos. I think I bought, because Roger Paul mentioned him. Oh no, Roger Paul bought him into, Roger Paul bought him into one of his videos really recently, where he showed a what looked like these two kind of like two big, what I would see as Nibiru and the twin tail that follows, but they were very, very wide. I would have seen them as Nibiru flying by, and the other evidence. But there have been other theories, haven't they? Maybe I will just try and. I won't go to that. I'll just. It's Jeff P recently made a video about it as well, talking about it. He was of a mind that, because there's been a lot of people catching these kind of beams of light going up to the sun, and could we be starting to understand that potential fake suns or some kind of sun simulators that could be used, the light source could be actually all be coming from the Earth itself, so we're just beaming a very powerful beam up to a dish or a receiver somehow, or some kind of like hydrogen fuel cell. Imagine beaming up into hydrogen and causing, or oxygen, and causing oxygen to fuse into hydrogen somehow, like that. You know, doing what photons do when they hit our atmosphere, and they split O2 into O and O, and those single O's can oxidize O2 and create ozone. You know, this process creates a massive amount of this kind of plasma, this light source that we can't see beyond. Could you potentially release O2 from a source and then shoot a beam of massively compressed photons, highly compressed light, and create plasma up in space? You know, just create the situation of what's happening when photons, like I say, hit our atmosphere and produce ozone, turn O2 into O3, or three sets of O2 jump into two sets of O3. Could we simulate that same thing by firing photons at a much more intense rate at oxygen, cause that same oxidizing process? Checked it out though. Thanks, Roger. Okay, moving on. Angela first again. Okay, so do Dave, no one who in their right mind will support evil. No offense to you, but we need a person to lead the people out of bondage and not be tethered to a white elephant. So is the EU the baddie here? Angela, you know, Angela, is the EU the baddie here? Are they the ones that have done it all? Are they the evil ones that have done it all? And that's my only real question here. Who's really driving this? You know, is it the EU? What are we, if we join a free trade deal with an America, aren't we going to be just absolutely torn to bits? Aren't we going to see massive fracking, massive genetic modification, massive terrible things? The likes, if we go into a contract, you know, get me wrong, if Brexit was delivered in the kind of fairy tale that people are suggesting is going to be delivered, I get it. That is a fairy tale, happy ending, and everyone lives happily ever after. But if we are walking into a free trade agreement that carves us up completely, then should we be cautious if this enables us to make a decision that in the eyes of the gods we are now affiliated with something that can enable us, because the biggest profit industry on this planet at the moment is war, and these type of contracts make us fall into the most dreadful kind of profiteering processes that corporations can take us into the most terrible places. Are we blaming Europe for everything that NATO has been doing? You know, Europe stands in the way of so much. Europe is our kind of trade alliance with Britain, and all the food and all the kind of legislation which kind of has controlled so much of what is not fair trade, but not free trade, but fair trade. Okay, so Unchained Melody 67. Sorry, just to read. I think it's I'm wearing these glasses that are just no way are they powerful enough anymore anyway, but I hope you guys are enjoying kind of like going through some of the comments and getting an idea of, I get a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes I really kind of struggle, but there are some really, really great comments here, and I just think it's really worth, because we're just getting a bit of a look at, and you could just fire ahead, but here and there I might be able to answer some questions about how I feel about things. The deep state globalists which you are supporting, are the warmongering force on this planet. It's not a given country that does this or that. It's not even NATO. It's the deep state faction that has subverted and embedded itself within most countries of the world. That is who starts and profits from wars, and they play them openly years in advance. Do yourself a favor and study up on what Gladio is. Well, that's an interesting That's an interesting name. Should we have a quick look at what Gladio is? I probably should know. Excuse my absolute ignorance. But, you know, before we kind of come to the third party here, the kind of the solution to all our problems, of what Gladio hopefully will be the solution to all our problems. And I'm going to read it up and find out and think, yeah, or maybe I already know what Gladio is and I already have that opinion. And Gladio is just the name of another name of something I already understand from another kind of like from another thread, perhaps. But it is not even NATO. So I do hear that, but NATO has been dragging us into a lot of wars. It's trying to drag, like I say, Venezuela and Colombia. It's trying to drag Venezuela and Brazil into a war with Venezuela right now. It's also trying to sort of like it's also got, you know, taking all these troops across the Russian border and antagonizing relationships with Russia. It certainly started the Libya war, you know, with David Cameron at the helm pretty much, and America and what have you. But you know, we've got to try and blame the right person here. You know, like France wouldn't even join the Iraq war in 2003. A lot of countries have voiced their dislike to it. You know, within Europe, we have the kind of like I say, the carrot at the end of the string was the kind of like the opportunity of being in a country like, being in a system like America's, but where all the dollars that are coming in really can't, you know, America has always been was a very wealthy country because it had complete economic kind of hegemony of the currency that was controlling the world. So there was a real heyday. And Britain and Europe wanted to be part of that. So that's why the euro was created, so we could have more of an open market. So there could be more there could be more kind of like trade going all these different ways. Now, if we're going to open up free, unregulated trade where we're just going to allow genetic modification, all this sort of stuff, we're not going to put any controls over this. This is a terrifying direction that we're going in. We've got to try and be a bit kind of like intelligent with our blame game. So, okay, so Glasto, I just put a control copy. I said we'd have a Gladio, Glasto. So let's go on the Gong page again, and maybe we'll go forward actually and open up a new one, and we'll just put Control V and see what Gladio is. If we're still online. Whilst I'm waiting for that to load, I might just switch the kettle back on again, load up for another cup of tea. So it's nice to take you guys on the journey with me because it takes bloody ages, and you probably won't be able to watch the whole thing, and you might be able to run forward and find your comment that you've made, so you can do a bit of a quicker reference and see what comments we're talking about. But I just wanted to make this about you because I'm going to trying to show you the wall I'm up against this with Operation Gladio. This looks interesting. Maybe this is what he's talking about. Operation Gladio is the code name of a clandestine stay-behind operations of armed resistance. Ah, no, I have heard about this. It was planned by the Western Union and subsequently by NATO for potential Warsaw Pact invasion and conquest of Europe, although Gladio specifically refers to the Italian branch of NATO. Staying behind organizations, Operation Gladio is used as an informal name for all of them. Stay behind operators were prepared in many NATO member countries and some neutral countries. Okay, so the role of the CIA in Gladio and the extent of the activities during the World War era and any relationships to terrorist attacks perpetrated in Italy during the years of lead, I'm not too sure, are subject of debate. So I have heard about this, kind of a little bit about this. I will look into it a bit more. I'll have a think about this. A friend of mine's talked to me about this also. And the more I'm just like letting my head kind of like peruse and trying to go back into my memory banks of what had happened and how people have become, people have been kind of sort of left behind afterwards and become kind of like CIA operatives and stuff like that, something along that line, sort of thing, feeding information back. And I get all that. I get all that. I mean, it's so okay. So let's keep going anyway. So the range. They def had 2 tails each. I'd say the bigger one was twice the size of the other. Yeah, for some reason, I've got this kind of feeling that the other one, I'm of a mind that the one that's getting closer, that we're seeing most of all, the big one, furthest orbiting one, is probably the biggest. But then I don't really know. You know, you know, the other one seems to. The other one, just by the way, just while I'm there on that one, I have this idea. I haven't proved it yet, but I'm just playing with the ideas. But just because now I've worked out it's a 396-day orbit round our sun and round whatever it's orbiting as they both go through each other. When I worked out that and I did that calculation, you remember where you kind of like you take 396, you divide it by 13. And you times it by 12 and it equals exactly 365 amount of days in a year, 365 point something, but 365 basically, which means that it's such a cosmic a kind of coincidence that it falls into exactly 1/13th, takes 1/13th of the longer amount of time then even looking at it in terms of actually proportionately bigger, and we've got the mathematics of silly things like that I couldn't help but think what would happen if you took one calendar month off deducted 31 off 365, and it came out to about whatever it was, but it was like 334 point, and it got so close to that 333. I was just like, I bet you when we finally calculate the inner orbit, it's 333 days, just to show the total cosmic, or 334, but just to show the total cosmic alignment, the cosmic coincidence that it is 330, that the big orbit is 396 days. It's so cosmic that there's grand design in that. Just like the moon and the Earth are the same size, the moon and the sun are the same size when they go into eclipse. These kind of odd coincidences, or like the moon orbits on its axis. What is it, in 29.25 days, whatever it is, and yet it also orbits the Earth in exactly the same period that we see the two movements are the same. So I'm just making a cup of tea as I'm going through these comments. And like I say, hopefully you can either scream down, you can just stop various stages and see the comments we're reviewing, and we won't be able to do all of them, but I just trying a general idea, because I saw that only £10 had been put into the PayPal thing to sort of help towards this, kind of like me running the European election and raising the 5,000. And I don't think it's going to happen. But I think it's a very different beast, isn't it? When you're talking about the kind of like the alignment, these timings, these celestial occurrences. But like I say, I found these celestial occurrences because of the kind of whole lineage of my own investigation and understanding what the nature of the wall is that we approach, and excuse me, I'm yawning. It's such a late thing to do. I see them as the same thing. Okay, so D-Truth. I think it's a bit silly to think humans are not having an impact on Earth, on planet Earth. Look up Guy McPherson. If you think that Planet X, if you think that it is Planet X that is causing all our problems and not just adding to them, then you are becoming polarized. We are facing near extinction, and the bread and circuses of politics will soon become very insignificant. The future predictions say that we will be glad to eat GMO rather than turn to cannibalism if we try and continue to survive. Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting comment. You know, we've just got to be careful in this big blame game who we end up walking to the gallows here. This massive scapegoating thing that Europe has done it all. You know, certainly Julian Assange just suddenly being arrested. You know, what is the big purpose of that? You know, where is this all gonna go? And then Trump putting sanctions on Europe. You know, this is like America putting its foot down and pulling Assange out of jail. Is it a big cover up? Is it a big stooge to hide something else that's going on at the moment? How's Theresa May going to benefit from this? Is he a trade? Imagine that. Is he a trade-off? Is he being traded for something? Very, very difficult to work out what's happening there with imagine if we didn't have to eat GMOs and do all that sort of stuff. Imagine if we managed just to keep this whole place in peace and realize that we can stay away from making really terrible things, stay away from making terrible decisions, and we could get maximum protection through this by not being subverted. Why do people believe that Europe is the baddie? Not to say that you believe this, the truth. It just seems a shame that if we ever had to turn to GMOs to survive, yeah, okay, it'd be a great thing. But imagine if we didn't have to drive the planet into that situation where we were so desperate. Here's to not being desperate. Okay, so let's just do. Dave, please look at a video by Edward Harms titled "Look What I Filmed" on April 10th, 2019. I believe it was filmed over Europe, a circular greenish huge object visible near the sun, and a twin-tailed comet which looks white in color. The video seems to be filmed in the afternoon. Thank you, Dave. Please look at videos by Edwin. Okay, Control C. Control V. Oh, and I need to go into YouTube, don't I? Are we still connected? Gonna get yourself connected. Sorry, it's a bit slow, my internet at the moment. See Nigel Farage, top of the search list already. He's everywhere. See how Theresa May is being sort of branded as the kind of like the EU Remainer who's trying to save Europe, but actually she's the one who wants her deal and nothing else. She wants to make sure we're absolutely out and that we don't lose our rights to trade with the European Union, but we are out, which means that then they can sign up deals and carry on as usual, but sign everyone up to free trade agreements, but to keep the trade of movement, keep all the business going and everything else like that. But so this is, you know, this is where she's going. This is, you know, if you just break all business with Europe, then why would you shoot yourselves in the, why would you commit suicide? That's just total suicide maneuver to cut all ties. Evil Europe, we want nothing to do with them. Cut all ties, horrible union. You know, they won't, you know, where was Germany when we wanted to bomb Syria? Bad Germany. Where was France when we wanted to bomb Iraq? You know what I mean? Bad France, you know what I mean? And they stopped genetically modified food and they stopped fracking, and oh my God, they're so evil. It's just like, guys, listen to ourselves, listen to the kind of like the stuff that they're kind of telling us. We want to sign a free trade agreement with America that makes us become one of the most sued nations on the planet. We can't legislate anything. Is that what we want? Anyway, what was it? It was, she said, Edward, I've put it in the thing, haven't I? So let's see if, well, there's a picture up there of the, could it be this one who's talking about the sun is blinking? Just going to see if I'm going to play your video for one quick shake, so we can see where it's blinking. You're seeing this thing up here, but what's the, has he got any other videos? The same person. Category gaming. That's quite interesting. I don't know if it's the same. If it's the same channel that he's talking about. It does seem to be a bit of a solar observer, doesn't he? Planet 10 everywhere, black hole and that after the sun. Planet X again. Very interesting, isn't it? I mean, this was just someone who she's just discovered quite by chance. I mean, what did she say the name of the title of the video was? Look what I filmed. Sorry. Well, it does seem to be. Doesn't seem to be on his channel, does it? Lifted out. It is the same. It's the same person. I won't play the video because I haven't really got permissions. I'm sure you won't mind, but see if we can see what he's seeing. Let's open it out. I think maybe he's talking about this thing up here or something. I'm not too sure really. Yeah, I think it's this thing here. It's that obviously many would argue was a jet plane, but these things are very unusual because when you see them, they behave in such ways as often they kind of move sideways. because this thing is the whole system is tracking one way or the other, the complete opposite way that we are. So we get a real chance to see the kind of like not this movement of this moving in its direction as it's orbiting whatever it's orbiting, you know, our sun, and indeed its system as they both pass through each other with the sun and the dwarf planet at the center, kind of thing. But as they move one way and the other, this is one of the few times we really, because of the sideways movement of this, and we've seen this a lot, is a real indicative kind of sign of this thing, because it moves sometimes faster sideways, and in fact sometimes it appears to be going backwards and sideways, which is so peculiar, which is why you know it's not a plane, because planes obviously don't go backwards, and they certainly don't go, well, they can drift sideways, but a jet plane just kind of going far sideways faster than it's going forward is suspicious. You know, it captures people's attention, or a plane that seems to be just holding in a position where it's not seem to be moving at all, and you think, well, how does that work? So there's these things, these are kind of anomalous behaviors that you see from these things that make people film them. So anyway, there's that's what I think we're talking about there, by the looks of it, unless there's any other. It's very small though. But it's the sort of thing when you see it, you're very that's lens flare, I think. But, when you actually see these little things, they do stand out. Anyway, I'm moving very slowly through the comments. You can imagine it takes me ages and ages and ages. I have to sort of take a great chunk at a time to do comments on, as anyone does. And sometimes there's so much stuff going on that and I kind of know the direction it's going. And I realize that putting myself up as a candidate for the election in a thing where I can never raise that 5,000. And maybe I have to address that as well, that it is not accessible to the people, just because the fact it does cost so much money. You know, that is definitely a downside to the whole system, that you have to pay to so much money to enter. A circular greenish huge object visible near the sun. I think that object, I mean, it could be the whole thing. It was a bit too shaky, really. It kind of looked a bit more too much like lens flare. But I didn't actually see it really that certainly that, you know, when we stopped on that single moment, it looked like lens flare. But that one, not to say that it is all lens flare. I mean, but this thing here, does it move? I mean, that could be literally that whole thing moving down this way. Very close to this big red Kachina right now. But that obviously could also be lens flare. It's very kind of like it's kind of very difficult to say on some of these shots. I mean, sometimes you see them and you can literally see this whole thing. You know, not always as big as this. This would. I kind of imagine that to be a lens flare because of the size of it, but then we could be so close to these systems at the moment. I mean, I've been feeling so emotional just lately anyway, to be honest with you, and I always think that when we're close to the big kind of blue and the red Kachina like we are now, not they'd be that big in the sky, but, you know, it does seem to move around quite a bit though, doesn't it? I'm just looking at the thumbnail there as I'm just holding it in different places. But I don't know, but we are next to the main system there. But okay, so little look anyway. So you didn't say where or when the picture of the lights in the sky were taken. If it is the one that was posted from India that was shown on third phase of Moon, it was just slow falling phosphorus flares. They were claiming was UFO. They were in the lower atmosphere. I believe the Becky Lewis photo was the smouldering coals of a fire pit, with the slight breeze making them appear to brighten at certain times on a very dark night at a distance in a field. Well, that could be the case. Although I did see the video afterwards that I think it was Becky Lewis, or maybe even it was Paula, her friend, who also started becoming a bit of it was a bit of an astronomer. But I'm trying to think if I'm getting my two dates, because I know she caught something in the night time as well and got very excited by it, and it was a really exciting moment because she got it, you know, at a time when it had just passed Earth, so it would have been around about kind of like late January, February sort of time that she caught something going into the night sky, but on a similar sort of thing. So maybe I'm getting my dates mixed up with the kind of the shot that Becky Lewis got on the shot that you're talking about, the shot on the 26th of June 2017, that it seems to be coming in from the night sky. But I remember watching the videos before and her showing where she was seeing it, how it couldn't have been a fire in the. It was either her or it was Paul, about how it couldn't have been a fire in the trees, because this was the angle and this was where it was, and it was definitely up in the sky. And it was what I was expecting to see as well in the night sky. I mean, you know, it's but it could have been, and that shot totally, the third phase of the moon put up that came over India, could have been a phosphorus cloud and that sort of stuff, except it's kind of what I'm expecting to see right now, similar sort of shape of what I'm expecting to see. It could have disappeared behind a cloud at that stage when it goes out. It's difficult to say. It could be a UFO. It's kind of, I'm expecting to see exactly that shape at this sort of time. You know, yeah. So okay, so we'll do this one next, and then I've got to go to the toilet actually. St Mary, Putney, London. There is a record of early concepts of English equality for all men on the backside of the bloodiest, dirtiest, and first civil war. The New World beckoned. St Mary's, Putney, London. St Mary's, sorry. St Mary's, St Mary's, St Mary's or Mary's, St Mary's, Putney, London. There is a record of early concepts of English equality for all men on the backside of the bloodiest, dirtiest, and first modern civil war. New World beckoned. Not too sure. Maybe you can elaborate on that one a little bit. But thanks for the shout out to Roger Paul. He is a good guy, genuine and honest in all he does. Worth a follow for that alone. His footage speaks for itself. My first hand unaided view of an object, June 3rd, 2018, 7:30 p.m. was about almost a year ago. It was about 5 degrees above the western horizon, 10 degrees below. I remember the first shots I got as well, Johnny. It was a moon size and it was giving off red light. So when was it? It was July the 3rd, 2018. That's interesting, because we get that we kind of get that July, August, September sort of period, don't we? You know, we've had quite a few big shots. I could so where did you say it was? Because you remember the Matt Rogers shot on the 15th of August 2016, and then we had the epic ESO shots. Not the ESO, but the great shots that came in when the ESO said they'd recorded a big gravitational anomaly on the 17th of August 2017. So we're not finding all these shots up for you straight away, but I'm just kind of like, you're saying sunsets about 9:30, so July 2018, 7 p.m. So just thinking about where Okay, so you'd be looking, thinking about the sort of like how the sun kind of rotates round, and the direction you'd be looking, you know, when you're looking at the sun at sunset, the left side is the southern hemisphere, and the north side and the right side is the northern hemisphere, if that makes any sense. So it's like you're suddenly not looking at it from the kind of perspective of horizon. It's like a massive, great Ferris wheel, big circus Ferris wheel, just going up like this, like a bicycle wheel going round. And that's how we're seeing the ecliptic plane. And so left and right is above and below that wheel. And so that's how we're kind of seeing it when we're looking at a sunset. We're actually on the Ferris wheel looking, we're standing on the side, you know, it's kind of an unusual perspective to get your head around that. And then obviously, depending on where you are on the Earth, because that's kind of more applies if you're closer to the equator, then it's more kind of like, then you're right at the most perpendicular point. But obviously, if you looked at it from the North Pole, you'd be kind of like right angle to that. Everything would be the other way around. And we're all kind of somewhere on that sort of threshold. So that kind of like the story of that kind of like that perpendicular perspective of sunset, where everything to the right of the sun is kind of like is sunset is kind of northern hemisphere. It's not exactly right, but you kind of get the gist about the kind of dynamics that Johnny's thinking about here by giving me this information of saying it's 7:30 p.m. Almost a year ago, about 5 degrees above the horizon, about 10 degrees below the sun. Those are estimated based on the length of days at the time of year. Sunset's about 9:30 p.m. It was the moon size and giving off red light strip with 5 or 6 lighter pink equally sized horizon stripes. Yeah, it's kind of in that sort of position. It's on the right side of the, turning up at the right side of the sun, if you like. You know, if you'd seen it as sunrise, you'd be looking out to another kind of side of the, if you like, our solar system. But seeing it there is exactly where we'd expect it to be coming in, because it'd be coming in July, August, then we get the big sign, remember we had, and then September you finally have the big earthquake and the big tsunami, you know, the earthquake and tsunami in Indonesia. And then we had all the big sightings. Ironically, Roger Poole put a shot up we saw of the big flyby in January. You know, we saw the asteroids following its tail. Wrap the News caught the asteroids. You know, that there's so much evidence of this thing and how it moves. So there's another little corroboration of what we're expecting to see. Thank you, Johnny, for that. Don Fate, great video. You're more the expert than I, but I have an idea. Could it be possible that the variances in its orbital cycle be caused by it being closer, further to other planets in our system, and the forces exerted by those interactions, or is velocity a constant? And that is that. You see, Don, I've got to be honest with you, these are kind of questions that, you know, in actual fact, the conversation I had with the Relentless Maverick about the similar sort of thing and how this moves around and how it kind of like, how we can imagine that the Earth and all Earth going around the sun and the Nibiru going around planet X are all kind of like slightly coming out of their normal orbits, because suddenly we've got the I don't know if you can call it in cars. You would call it the center of gravity, wouldn't you? In cars, you would call it the center of gravity. You could have the engine at the front and the sort of like not very much at the back and that sort of stuff, or you could bring the engine into them, and that would make the center of gravity much closer to the front of the car, unless you had lots of people in the car. But many sports cars prefer to bring the engine more into the center. And I can imagine for all our planets rotating around these kind of like these big celestial objects that have been coming through each other, is that they kind of average out their kind of, I don't know, but I can imagine they kind of like they move to kind of they kind of rotate an orbital kind of center of gravity of all of these masses that are passing through each other, and they will have their kind of like overall because there's multiple speeds to think about here. There's the speed that they're traveling as they orbit round whatever they're orbiting, the sun or planet X, these two systems passing through each other, but they're both also orbiting. You know, they're going round one way, but as they're going round, they're kind of going, they're skewing along because whatever they're orbiting is also moving incredibly fast. So they have these various kind of like these various points of momentum driving them along, kind of keeping them there in some way or other on their orbital tracks because of stored energy in their kind of like that's in their kind of existing movements, that they're kind of going where they're going, but they obviously must be massively affecting each other, and they must be exciting each other's kind of gravitational kind of like, you know, the energy within each planet. They must be having massive effects on us in so many different ways. Okay, so we're going to stop that there for one shake, and I'm just going to pause the recording and run off to the little boys' room, and I'll come back with more. Okay, back again. Sorry about that. So where were we? Let's go back to this this sharing. You know, obviously, I don't think I can do all the comments on this one page, but by any means, done, Johnny. Susan Donahue, they've taken these distractions to a whole new level. The evil ones are so frustrated as their master plans unravel like a cheap sweater. IMHO. What does that IMHO? I'm just thinking, if I stare at that, it would just suddenly become obvious. But they are running down the clock. They're running down the clock as anticipated. 50 plus years. Earth events tear our planet apart. Planet X. I think this is Alex. I'm not too sure. It might be Alex. Anyway, it's just comets, Dave. I'm not worried about these comets. We've been seeing comets. We've been seeing comets our lifetimes. Why didn't anyone say anything about Neura back then? Love you, brother. It's just comets. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I am. It might be. It really might be. You know, I think the patterns are too concise, but but they could just be comets going around, not planets at all. It could be. But on the other hand, you know, there's big gravitational effects happening when they seem to fly by at very precise times that we can clearly predict, because I've been doing that for a long time. got a lot of mass to them. They're affecting our Earth. They're affecting our axis. They're doing all sorts of interesting, having all sorts of interesting effects. If they are comets, they're very, very big comets. But, you know, truly, I do not know. And if it is Alex, truly, Alex, you know, he's got the same channel name, so it could be Alex there. Truly, I don't know, but okay, here we got this Michael Eldridge. He normally says the most terribly painful stuff, but come on, we're just airing it all, and I'd just rather have it all out there. So you've lost whatever credibility you had by sourcing information from third phase of the moon. That channel is full of CGI and fake content. They have caused irreparable damage to the field of ufology with their fake reporting, misinformation and fraudulent claims, just total BS to get their ratings up. Well, there you go. I mean, you know, but I love Blake Cousins. I love the whole kind of like, I love the whole show. I love the way his whole reporting thing. He obviously, you know, I think he's doing a lot of things right. He's got a lot of subscribers, puts a lot of information, leaves it up to the public to decide. He's not really pushing any one thing or the other. I've seen a lot of interesting shots. A lot of people send a lot of information in. Remember those pyramids over the top of the Pentagon? I mean, were they real? Very, like 3 different people sent in the footage that could have been set up, sure. But nonetheless, it was amazing. It made everyone think and look, and you know, he's really got us something out there. 3 separate people. Did they set him up? Don't know. Was that legit? I've seen him put a lot of interesting stuff up. I think we're all opening our minds to different ideas of what's plausible and not plausible. You know, my message, you know, Michael, my message about Europe, especially, it must be sort of like, you know, it makes people so angry. Why would want to be, you know, we've had 1,000 years of kind of war in Europe, and like, and the thought of actually keeping the union together, you know, I love Europe. I love going out into Europe. I love the fact that we've had this kind of open, kind of like, you know, the whole refugee crisis that has caused this whole thing that's been caused by Britain and America and NATO doing all this bombing, and then suddenly Europe's the big baddie because it's letting refugees in, and yet, you know, what do you do when you've got people coming in that are fleeing war-torn areas that are being sort of ripped apart by the weapons from your country, as in my country? You know, it's a catch-22 situation. It's such a big thing. This is how I came into Planet X, by this whole understanding about what's happening in Europe and seeing this whole thing. And I always seem to be on the other side of the fence in a lot of, you know, I was an environmental activist and that sort of stuff. But I found myself with just, in the early stages, I sounded so proficient about understanding climate change, but I just didn't really understand anything about it. I realized I was just full of sound bites and these little nuggets of information which I've been fed down the way, and most of them because they were supposed to be official scientific data, but that are feeding into climate change and everything. I believed it all, you know, and we've all been there. We've all suddenly, then we've all found ourselves defending an argument that we know nothing about. And I've come to this place where I'm just seeing from a very specific perspective. But I tell you, I love your comments, and I love your strong comments, and I love the way you're just so blatant about it and everything else like that. And you're very direct, but you're not, you know, the comment section of YouTube is the kind of front line of our world at the moment, isn't it? And I think just letting people say what they've got to say, good or bad, get it out there. You know, even people reading all this stuff, they want they want passion. They want blandness and that sort of stuff. So, Michael, you know what I mean? Thanks for commenting, man. GP, hello, Dave. I stopped because a sub told me I had a Dave Dobbs object and I caught my camera. Take care, bro. Hello, brother. I stopped because a sub told me I had. Ooh. So GP out there, send it through, brother. Send it through. I should be writing all these down on these things. I'll probably go through and start typing. If I start adding all the stuff in right now, then you can see how badly I read these things, let alone start writing and showing the degradation of my terrible spelling. I'm just like, I think I'd rather sort of like avert that that embarrassment and do all that later. So Bonnie Strong, it hurts to say this, but I pray this bangs us, because if it doesn't, the timeline will not change and the powers to be will destroy this planet. My heart, I believe, in my heart, I believe this thing brings us back to the Stone Age so we can start over again. Yeah. And do it right, family first, not war. No more, no more fracking, no more chum trails. They're killing our kids. As if there was another way, other way, I would be for it. But Monsanto is our future. If this doesn't manifest, I hope the best on your run. If you win, I want to move to Bristol. Thank you. You know, it's not going to hit, Bonnie, number one. And number two, you know, we go back to the Stone Age. I'll tell you what, we move out of the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. You know, and we can evolve these shortfalls that we've got at the moment. A big part of what's happening to humanity is what's coming through humanity. It's not really what humanity is, it's what humanity is manifesting, because as crazy as it is, because of all the psychic interference that is invading humanity at the moment, because of the many different kind of psychic holes that have been opened up, and the kind of total, the mess of everything at the moment, really. It's a big psychic mess more than anything else. And I feel that this thing brings a massive clearing with it, you know, and it's very, very scary for the ego. It's very scary for a lot of energy, because it's a brick wall for so much of this stuff. This is the real cleansing that this thing does. It pulls away, you know, it leaves only one. It leaves only one soul attached to any one body, and no backseat drivers. That's what the Colburn Bible seems to kind of like loosely define it, by its kind of definition of how people had no memory of who they were. They crept out of their hiding places, and they had no memory of who they were, and their gods and guides have been ripped clean from them. All these connections that they hadn't had root, you know, the only thing that remains with you is that which is absolutely rooted into your heart. So it's kind of a very cleansing time. It just rips away, kind of like all these other illusions that come in through these kind of like crazy ideas. And many of these are kind of like, you know, seem to be like attachments, thought attachments that are attached to our psyche, that are feeding us in narratives. Call it ego, call it whatever you like. For these subversive kind of like narratives that kind of like make our ability to change the status quo seem impossible. Hopeless. We can't change this. Fighting past that narrative to a place of action. In an environment like me, for example, you can see I'm in a place of, I place myself right now in the situation where I put myself in the line of something. You know, you put your head above the parapet, you stand in the line of fire. But when you put me to do something like what I'm doing at the moment and say, no, I want to be part of Europe. I want to be part of the European Union. I want to be a part of this thing that we won at the end of that Second World War, that we finally managed to bring a union of countries together. So we are powerful together. So we're big contenders. If we're broken apart, we're just going to fall apart and be picked off by other trade agreements and then set off in wars against each other to sort of like to get whatever's on the end of the sort of like whatever carrot they're hanging on the end of the string. You know, NATO is an aggressive, warring frontier, and that's how it drives its global dominance. We've got to see where the war-provoking aspects of this world are coming from, and disassociate from those. Can we blame Europe for all of this? You know, can we differentiate partially from what the euro and a fiat-based currency could mean to, and what a European alliance could mean? There's a lot of blurry lines that we're choosing to give up here. Anyway, so yeah, send it through subgeniustv at gmail.com. Bonnie Strong, it hurts to say this, but I pray that this thing. Oh, so we've done this one, haven't we? Sorry. Oh no. Has she just done that again? Oh no, we've done that one. Bless you. Okay, Bonnie, thank you. Bonnie Strong again. Marshall says blue Kachina is when it's coming and it turns red when it's going out. I don't know if it really matters, but just throwing that out there. You're my hero in so many ways, Mr. Dobbs. It has nothing to do with the Buru. It's you and your aura and your passion, your drive that is beautiful. I strive to have the man you are. I strive to be half the man you are, Mr. Dobbs. I hope Ma is okay. My family prays for you guys. Godspeed with us. Bonnie, thank you, my lovely. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Janet Sullins. Oh, yesterday morning, 4th and 9/19, Dixon NM. I took dogs at 6 a.m. I saw red both in the northwest and the east. I wondered where it was, and now I think maybe tailed. And why doesn't the red with blue Kachina move? Why doesn't red and blue Kachina move? Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, you know, the red Kachina, you know, we're starting to see these big things right now. It's because they've been coming over the top of the sun. You remember where I said, you know, we finally understood how Carlos Ferrada's prediction of the 20th of January, 1939, how he so accurately predicted that passage, and how he also predicted it would return in 1999 and be the size of the moon in 1999. And yet there we have kind of like 1997, 98, we had Comet Halley-Bopp, and we're told it's a comet or whatever. Then we come back round, and then we've seen all these different comets of Polybis, and we've had all the patterns, and we're seeing all the effects. And I argue that this is coming through, and these are slow-moving things. You know, it's taken 100 years to come over. It's taken, you know, it's 1939 to now. It's like 80 odd. It's like 80 years to I don't know if that's right anymore. Yeah, about 80 years to come over the top of the sun. It's got this object that's spinning behind it, and then you can imagine that that's traveling considerably faster because that's orbiting this thing, but they're both all kind of coming over the sun at the same time. So you've got this kind of that movement. But how quickly are they moving? How quickly are they kind of on this spiraling orbit where they're going around? you can imagine that these things are really quite much more likely to see the movement in their own kind of like it more likely to see kind of movement in the form of it spinning on its axis than maybe specific movement. Although, do you remember Dill Martin got a shot, his last video, around about one of his last videos, it's the big thumbnail for his on his channel, and he stopped making them videos about. Yeah, but I'm sure it was around about January 2017. And he just stopped making them. He got some epic shots and just stopped. He had a really big subscriber base. I think I'm reaching the same with that a little bit. I'm reaching total burnout with it personally myself. I struggle so much with it. And I know that we're just learning more about it. And I'm realizing, but it also actually really hurts as well to do this, because I can see that most people have jumped into bed with this idea that Europe ultimately is the baddie. And just giving enormous power to NATO and all the terrible things, and Europe is getting to be the baddie, and it's this direction is going to bring our reception to whether we try and stay in Europe right now, our chances of changing the course of events is going to determine, you know, the fact it hasn't just happened. Something big hasn't just happened, like we haven't just left the European Union just when we were supposed to, and it's dragged on to now, and now it's been extended till Halloween. It's ridiculous, this kind of like this shotgun contract. You know, how was this meant to play out? Is this all really part of the great plan? That's what I'm saying. Is this all really part of the great plan? Like I say, you know, in the last video, I talked about how the kind of like the Martian invasion, they stage Orson Welles' reworking of H.G. Wells' work, put on in 1939. I was wrong about that. It wasn't the 31st of October, 1939. It was the 30th of October, 1938. And then the big flyby happens exactly when Carlos Ferrada says happened on the 20th of January, 1939. So the big kind of like, woo, everything goes absolutely crazy, goes crazy about fake news. No one could believe anything. This massive flyby is coming in. Everyone's screaming out, Planet X is flying by. And they're like, yeah, mate, another nutbag. Man, you know, I think they were expecting a much bigger thing to occur on the 20th of January, 1939. I think they were expecting a much bigger thing to occur then. Yeah, there's been a whole systematic things that have happened during this time, and we can see some quite terrifying things. But what I fear is, if it's happening at the moment, is humanity itself is evolving, and we might make it through this if we can stop the European Union being broken up. Only from a perspective that we can stay together and not be fed by NATO into a group war against Russia. That we can keep a union of trade, and so we can continue to move food all around and that sort of stuff. Say the dollar goes down, say the dollar crashes. We've got to understand this is a big currency grab at the moment. Everything is in a state of flux. We have no idea of what the effects of this are going to be on the kind of like the electronic realm that the Earth has become now, with all the digital data, which apparently can be very susceptible to these to the huge, great thunderbolts that can come as a result of being in super close perihelion to these kind of like these objects in their kind of like in their individual orbits as they keep going round Planet X or Herculosis or whatever you want to call it, the Planet X, this the dwarf planet, and this Blue Kachina. We can just see that we've done it a lot of times before and we're still here. And so there is a way through. There is a way through. I'm skint or I donate for the future, but if you do manage to raise the funds and run, I'll vote for you for what it's worth. And I'll do my best to make sure everyone I know does the same, as well as sharing and promoting you in any way I can. Love from Bristol. Oh, mate, thank you so much, man. That's so lovely. That's so lovely. Read more. Look at that. Words from Bristol. P.S. We've already got some of those zones you're talking about in Bristol City. They're called the Bear Pit. Lol. I know the Bear Pit very, 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 very well, actually, Mark. I know Chris Chalkley very well as well, actually. He's kind of rescued that space. He did rescue that space. He's a legend, total legend. He was the one who organised that, the European Union thing where I show the topless, the two topless girls. They're not actually topless. They have got a little bit of kind of tape over the kind of like the vital statistics, but one with the kind of British kind of like Union Jack and one wearing the kind of like the flag of the European Union. And around about the Brexit time, and he really pushed that and said, "Look, guys, this is just total bullshit. We're all being set up to hate and scapegoat Europe for everything the British government has done, and NATO and American government, and just like, guys, he threw it." So thanks, Mark. Thank you. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm putting it out, aren't I? And I'm just trying to. I don't know if I'm doing it really the best way, but I just thought I'd use this video as a means just to kind of communicate with subscribers, and just know that it's a big process for me to even sit down and go through this, and just know that, I've looked in the account to see whether anyone has chucked in any money, and I've got to be honest with you, there's a tenner in there. And so bless you, whoever it was who put £10 in my account towards this, towards my kind of like saving the European Alliance kind of like campaign, which is really what I've been doing for the last kind of 13 years of my life, with laughing gas, talking about why we shouldn't leave Europe. And not that it's exactly tailored just like that, but a big part of the visions that happen were as a result of understanding the woes for us as leaving Europe, and what we'll attempt to do, and why we become such a threat to the greater globe as a result of being used as the Trojan horse itself that brings these free trade agreements in, and what we bring in with these free trade agreements, and where it places us in the eyes of the powers that really drive the cogs of these great celestial objects. What we're attempting to do a deal with, and what we're talking about giving up. It's a far cry from everything that the Brexiteers were calling out for, that's for sure. Thanks again, Dave. Say hello to your mum. Hope she's well. Thank you, Mr. David French. Roy Tallow, son's twin came home here today. Son's twin came home here today. Grow your own food and trade with friends. That's how we're going to cope if we do crash the whole economy, if it all goes down. Imagine if it didn't have to go down and we managed to keep going through this somehow. Imagine if we just managed to get through this somehow. We didn't go into war. We didn't do any of that. We just said, actually, no, there were no rush to break any kind of unions with anyone right now. We're just going to try and get through this without driving other countries into a crazy aggression and that sort of stuff. Maybe that's all certain kind of parts of government know, but we have got to try and keep things in a state of peace as well, and trying to do the least we can to exacerbate bad relationships with our neighbours. Breaking up the European Union is not a good idea right now, I don't think. Also the temporary Vicky Samoya. Also the temporary wall idea is cool, but you can't run that idea. It's impossible of staying unified. And sounds like Trump. Unless the whole idea is just to making fun of walls that goes with your theme. I think you've hit it right on the head there, Vicky. I just wanted to look at, because we got the the whole thing about Bristol. One of the things about Bristol is that you've got the it's this place that the Isambard Kingdom Brunel, he kind of built the Great Western Railway to kind of like Bristol. It was a massive step in its time. It was a really big thing. And then he built the SS Great Britain in Bristol, and he also built the Great Bridge that crosses the Clifton Gorge. This was the first suspension bridge of its time, the Clifton Suspension Bridge. It's massive, and the Great Western Railway is one of the things from one of the big creations, the big industrial creations, in the United Kingdom by a kind of like crazy inventor, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. He's the one who forgot the moon. He's the one who forgot the moon when he built the SS Great Britain. He designed a massive paddle ship that it was going to sail out and into the sort of like into the big wide waters, and they were going to be sort of like, it's going to be the first steel hull paddle ship, and it actually turned into the first steel hull paddleless paddle ship that was actually driven by a propeller, the first of its kind ever built. So it was the first steel hull ship with a propeller, because he'd forgotten the moon, he'd forgotten the tidal shift, and of course with the paddles on the side, never get the bloody thing out. So he actually crippled the company that bankrolled him, because they had to come up with so much more money to finish the project. So they had to find the money. So they found the money, but in doing so, financially crippled themselves. And then everything went bankrupt, and the ship was sold off to other companies after the whole thing. So he was this crazy designer. He thought he knew everything, and he couldn't even bring in the corporations of the moon into his maths. And I said once in a political campaign, if Isambard Kingdom Brunel can forget the moon, is it not possible that we might forget Mars? And I made some loose connections about the whole kind of Mars thing, and lots going on Mars, and sort of like but anyway, with this idea of playing with this kind of wall idea, it's kind of the Great Wall. I mean, it's a joke. Obviously, it is a total joke, because, can you imagine it? This is what we're talking about with kind of like Ireland and that sort of stuff, and just kind of playing with this idea of having this big festival wall that will get Michael Eavis to sort of build only when we have big parties and festivals. And when we're, I mean, it's silly, it's just silly, but just to kind of like, we're not going to get any press coverage at all, basically. None at all. The media completely run the whole thing. Nigel Farage is at the whole front of this thing. He is their big show and his big play. We will not even get seen on any. All the times I've run for government, I've barely got any coverage in any mainstream media whatsoever. Like I said, I could run for mayor of London, as I did, as in I put myself up as a candidate before you have to pay the £10,000. Made it absolutely public clear. Loads of other people who were talking about the kind of like the big agenda that they were pushing get coverage, and yet there I was, living outside the Guardian in a pink rickshaw, wearing a bright yellow suit, just to make absolute clearly evident that we are not part of their story. They are running a story, but that doesn't mean that we cannot enter their story and bring influence into that story, because when real people enter it, you start realizing, oh my God, this is democracy, where the people come, except that they've got to put a theatre show in its place. And we need to step into that theatre show and make it real again. So yeah, it was, unless the whole idea is just making fun of walls that goes with your theme. Yeah, it's kind of more along the line of that, really. We're just having a bit of fun but just talking about getting involved in the European election and bringing a voice into it and bringing some transparency and some fresh energy into it. And you know, I tend to big up the other candidates when I'm running for a post, but just get a chance to be there when the other politicians are saying these unbelievably crazy things, and you challenge them on these things, and you just bring a bit of real life reality, and it makes people think, oh my God, do I really, what are they saying? And what are they not saying in this bland nonness of just like where they just don't really answer any questions, and it's all a bit vague, and everything's just like, okay, you know. Okay, so that's, I hope that's answered your, Vicky. I mean, I was just playing with some silly ideas there, but Tessie McCall, my thumbs up. Keeps disappearing, so I have to redo it. Another person telling me that it keeps disappearing. Alan Story, Dave, if you're going to run, you should probably learn to stake things in more sufficient manner. Rambling is detrimental to your message. Thank you so much, Ellen. I do know that I'm actually so terrible. I really am. Fortunately, I've always fought for last place in most political processes. You know, I'm really not trying to win, but I'd love to get involved and bring energy to that involvement process so they can just not try and make it happen without anyone really noticing. In God we trust. Kiss what? Kiss what? Well, you know, when you just meet people and you just kiss them on the cheek, you know, or just little, even on the cheek. Sometimes men just don't always kiss on the cheek. They could do a bit more of a macho kind of like, you know, kind of chesty kind of, but it's that kind of acknowledgement. It's a proper kind of, rather just a business handshake. It's a kiss. A kiss is a kiss introduction is a big part of what Europe is about. It's a much more, it's very cultured, very sweet, very lovely place where people, not everywhere, but the French have had a massive, the French and the Italians and the Spanish have had a massive influence, I think. I mean, there is just there's massive culture in Europe, you know, and it's and it really comes out, and it's a really lovely quality. There's kind of polite, kind of like, don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be invasive, because some people aren't comfortable with that if you come into their space, but you can still come in and you just, you know, you just coming from side to side, you're doing a greeting basically, and where you just become a bit closer and you acknowledge respect to the other person. It basically means it's like you're saying you're coming in peace. So that's what I mean by kiss. Okay, Janet Sullins, Dave, just out of curiosity, where is Chiron on your map? Chiron. Oh, that probably should make total sense to me. You have to excuse my total ignorance to your question. Control C. Let's go up and have a little look and ask what the hell. Excuse me. I'm gonna totally embarrass myself and just like say I have no idea what you're talking about. Sorry. But hopefully I'm going to find out. Chiron, Greek mythology. Chiron in Greek mythology, one of the centaurs, the son of the Titan, Cronus and Philra on, oh my God. How do you pronounce that? Okinid? Oceanid? I cannot remember. And nymph. Chiron lived at the foot of Mount Pelion in Thessaly, unlike our centaurs, who were violent and savage. He was famous for his wisdom and knowledge of medicine. So there you go. You can see how much I know about that. Apologies about that. I can't answer any questions about that one, can I? Oh yeah, look at this. Ron Paul speaking on the fence is sort of like, I bet he absolutely adores kind of like Julian Assange. I certainly do. I think he's amazing what he's done. It's proper, it's real reporting. It's the old-fashioned, Julian Assange is just doing old-fashioned reporting, isn't he? And they want to stop all that. Look at him coming out of there. I won't play that as a Guardian video, but so Dave, just out of curiosity, where are you? Where is that? I don't know. Don't know. Kirsten Haynes, the damn things are close, man. I see it. Kirsten, nice one, yeah. Dave, the heaven, Dave. Is that Dave the heathen? Who cares? Godspeed Car Audio, Dave the heathen. Who cares? Judah for life. Longshanks versus William Wallace too. Yeah, totally. There's kind of like these stories come into all these, you know, and actual fact, you know, that kind of that when would William Wallace have been? Because the Battle of Lewes was 1264. And Edward was a young man. His father was, this was his father's reign. So he was obviously had all his you know, in actual fact, many say that Edward caused the Battle of Lewes to fail, in actual fact, because he just ran ahead with the king's best horses and that sort of stuff on call, that believing that, you know, he left Lewes Castle, the state-of-the-art armory at the time, the most powerful place on this, you know, someone had called his mother a whore or something like this, and they said, and they'd fed information that Simon de Montfort, his campaign to take the king, had failed, and none of the Londoners had followed him down, and that he was stuck up on the hill, with barely anyone following him behind, and the whole thing had failed, and that he'd insulted Longshanks's mother, Edward I's mother. He wasn't Edward I then. It was just kind of like his father was still alive. His father was still King of England, Henry III. And so Longshanks had just charged off up there with all the king's finest and all of what we're told is this, the Londoners. But of course, it was a revolution. It was a total revolution. The people of England had risen up against against Henry III. This was an uprising. He knew that the people knew they were powerful. They knew they had power. This was a massive uprising. This was more than just Simon de Montfort and a few. And so, you know, you know, this was Robert the Bruce, who was also there in that battle, would have also been young, because Longshanks would have just been in his 20s then. You know, the tales of William Wallace coming, and you know, that's a little bit later, isn't it? You know, it's Edward I was was older, been king for quite a while then. You know, so these are these ways of looking at history through the cycles of Planet X and seeing this bigger kind of understanding of these big cycles from another perspective makes history a very, very small, makes our history seem really quite condensed. So James, how do you pronounce that? Somying. The Indians shot down a satellite. When I see this video, I thought you might use it. Stop babbling about Brexit. Sorry. Yeah. Let me on that note, talking about babbling about Brexit and everything else like that, I'm just going to stop the share. I'll run out and have another week. Get back to you. Okay, so let's go. These little breaks. So I'm not realizing this is long for you, but if you are following this still, this comment inquiry, just to try and get a bit of a feeling of where things would go in terms of actually trying to get support for this EU election via the channel, and whether it's feasible, and whether it's I realise that if you're absolutely if you're actually convinced that Europe's the baddie, stop babbling about Brexit. That's where we were, weren't we? It's been playing out for years, Dobbsy, and will still play out just like old Naburu. There you go. Thank you, Dave. Many blessings, brother. Willis Arnold. Good seeing and hearing you, Dave. Look forward to your show. Stay the course. We're almost home. Thank you, Dave. Just go to 1511 to see why you shouldn't. Just go to 1511, see why you shouldn't run. I'm scared to go up to, what I'll do is I'll go see. I'll go over here because I probably won't be able to find that place in the comments. Control V. What does he mean of my video, 1511, in the video that I did? Cheers, everyone. Well, and I put it onto this astronomical sighting. It's quite exciting because 15. If we, let me just stop that share and share, come back to this video. I haven't been looking at anything too controversial. 1511. So that's 1511. But strange. Could be that one he's talking about. But 1511 to see why you shouldn't run. That's probably what he's talking about, the thing coming in. I don't know. Oh, look, that's the end of it. Look, that's the end of this video anyway. Just go to 1511, see why you shouldn't. There's nothing any of us can do besides pray. Dave, you have the orbits targeted, but you are using the Jesuit Sun concentric centric model. Rather, why don't you make the Earth immovable and the largest surface, and make your objects much smaller, and track the sightings locations in Earth? Info good stuff, but the Earth is not moving and certainly not rotating. Well, that's an interesting comment, isn't it? One thing I never do is never poo-poo flat earthers, or this is a very kind of Aristotle perspective, actually. Aristotle kind of like, in biblical terms, had the earth on the kind of like the palm of God, on the hand of God, and kind of all the world around us, all the universe around us. And so Aristotle was kind of like I fought for a long time against the whole Aristotle idea, and how the Big Bang, how Galileo's telescope destroyed in around about the same time as the discovery of the first kind of dwarf planet. That was discovered in 1597, Ceti B, or Mira, whatever you want to call it. And then just 1612, 1613, Galileo is discovering, I'm not too sure what he said the cluster was, whether it was Saturn or Jupiter's moons, whatever he saw. But I'm of a mind, obviously, he saw we're seeing the big system now. He wasn't seeing some far, far away object you can only see with powerful telescopes just suddenly popping in. for a look in suddenly, temporarily. You know, he was seeing this system just like we're seeing it now, and that destroyed Galileo. That destroyed Aristotle's kind of perspective that the Earth was the center and nothing else was moving. Everything was moving around us, and for a long time. And I do see how the Big Bang Theory also is kind of like, in some attempts, is to, you know, the Big Bang Theory built on the kind of concept of kind of Hubble's constant, you know, the further something is from Earth, the faster it travels, kind of boiled down to this kind of simplest kind of principle, the simplest mechanical principle I can see that really defines kind of like this kind of expanding universe Big Bang Theory. And when you condense that kind of concept, like a hand grenade, you see a hand grenade blowing up in slow motion. You know, the big kind of like shell on the outside starts cracking and it starts moving out very slowly, but the internal kind of center to the most central combustion process of that is accelerating at the very fast, and tiny shards and bits of high velocity gases and dust from the very source, from the very core, are breaking out, going past that kind of the heavier casing very rapidly. And this gives you the idea that the faster something is moving, the further away from Earth. Notice we put Earth into this equation, or Hubble did. The further something is from Earth, the faster it travels, implying that Earth, if we were kind of, instead of looking at sort of like the universe, the kind of like the expansion and creation and expansion of the universe from a single point, we're looking at a hand grenade going off, and represent that as represent of our universe. We could, if we're going to sort of like put that point, the further away something is from a certain point, the faster it travels. The only place you could find that where that rule would be consistent would be right in the center of that, wouldn't it? You'd have to be in the center. You'd have to be in the center of the explosion for those rules to apply. And so if you can apply that kind of Hubble constant to kind of like the notions of a kind of like of an expanding universe and the Big Bang, you know, the whole Big Bang Theory inadvertently places Earth back in the center of the universe. It replaces that kind of Hubble idea. And so we've got this battle of where Earth needs to be in the center of it all. And in many ways, I've come back to these ideas that if we kind of consider that we're all the center of the universe, there is only one here and one now, then suddenly we kind of, where you can spend so long arguing with this notion that we weren't center of the universe, and that we're on a tiny planet in a massive universe that is not bound by these rules of just like, you know, created by a Big Bang Theory. It's a much more elongated kind of like long drawn out creative process of very long, you know, the universe is it's a much bigger story than that. It's much more complex, opening and spreading out much more organically rather than from a single point. You know, and then you know, I've also seen, you know, this idea of a big Earth, because, you know, basically I never poo-poo any of these ideas: flat Earth, round Earth, hollow Earth, kind of like concentric Earth, kind of like you know, these kind of like geoconcentric. Sorry, the you know, the geoconcentric model that we kind of like that we can't really look at, and the notions that some flat earthers are going to now, which is this kind of go between what you're talking about here and a flat Earth. And this is a character who's exploring this is James Defoe, who kind of came into making his Impossible Channel as a flat earther, and he's just reviewing so much data, and he's kind of seen so much evidence of planets and so much evidence of other stuff out there, and yet he kind of really captures all the kind of space agency lies and everything, throws it up with lots and lots of questions, and leaves you questioning anything and everything with lots of very interesting kind of perspectives. But the way he's kind of moved the whole flat Earth thing forward in some sort of way is his investigations into Antarctica, and these notions that the planet Earth could actually be much, much bigger, and that this massive territory that, say, Admiral Byrd, from the kind of like the whole Operation High Jump after the Second World War, when supposedly, Admiral Byrd, an American admiral, went with just armed to the teeth with kind of battleships and submarines and stocks and troops and all sorts of things, and was just no match against whatever he met in Antarctica. And supposedly got taken down to the center of the Earth. And he wrote diaries about his journeys in the center. Well, not in the center, but in a massive hole right down in Antarctica, and this massive hole that he got beamed into. He got locked up into a mental asylum after this, and he was one of the highest decorated people. If it was just him on his own, but the fact he lost kind of a good proportion of his men that died in the fighting, whatever they were fighting, and everything else. It's just like something big happened in this land. So is it possible that the kind of Operation High Jump, beyond this massive wall, that Antarctica is so much bigger than we've ever realized, and actually the Earth is much bigger than we ever realized, and we only inhabit, and our little story is only on a tiny part of the much bigger Earth that we're actually on? That we're almost like on a cap. There's a million different stories in a million different ways. Every space agency lying, every story. We just have no idea of just the magnitude. All I do in my channel is charter the kind of odd pattern of this thing. Do I truly understand it? And have I not completely upgraded the model with more sightings constantly? It's been this constant process of understanding and trying to make sense of and asking new questions. And so all ideas are up for grabs here. The Earth could be much bigger. Maybe it really is, or some kind of, maybe from the perspective of dimensionalism, we can bring everything back to that here and now that Aristotle originally spoke, that we could all kind of come to the same page of understanding the kind of this process of Earth and the here and now that we're on might be a lot more powerful and a lot more potent and a lot more fantastic than we ever realize. But thanks again. That's just going through those comments. You can get my feeling that basically, no, we're not going to raise $5,000 for me to run for the EU elections. And like I said, I've looked in earlier. So we're going to go to the next video, and I'm going to run the comments on the next video as well. But that's another video for anyone else who wants to sort of go through and they've commented and they want to kind of hear what other people are saying to the whole thing and their just general feeling for it. But there's a lot of respect there also in all those comments, and I appreciate everyone who comments and says what they've got to say and adds to the banter here, and we express our opinions on it, and then we can all talk about it, and hopefully and great comments, really intelligent people expressing really strong opinions with a little bit of kind of like with a little bit of grey matter. It's really good stuff. Thank you for that. Thank you for your feedback. Like I say, I'm just representing my feelings on this whole thing, where the messages I get. My message I get is stay by Europe. If you leave Europe and let Europe fall apart, we'll go with it. It will not be a good process. But I might be completely wrong with that. And that's a message I've got through, and that's how I've come on my journey. And I've tried to express why that is, and why the woes of joining these free trade agreements. These could get a lot worse than we ever realised. Such agreements, signing up to, as far as I can see, a deal with the devil there. You know, if it was just the Brexiteer sovereignty, it would be something, but it's just not that, and we know that. So take care, and I'll make a short video and cover this a bit more, and probably upset a few more people with my opinions. But hey, let's just stop the share. And long video. Sorry about that. But thanks for your comments. Take care. Ciao.